Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Big Brother 24 Roundtable podcast. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and I am here today to talk to you all about everything that's happening on the Big Brother 24 live feeds. With me today is Melissa. How you doing, Melissa?
I'm good. What a week. There was a lot going on this week. I feel like the ratings went up and down for me. So I honestly, oh, it's back. Oh, wow. I feel like it's been
You're
so
back.
long.
You were out last week.
That's true. Gotta have the music, the theme. It's gotta come back. Yeah, I'm very glad to be back. It was very sad to miss last week, and I basically made up for it on the next night's podcast where I just like talked and wouldn't stop. So yeah, glad to be back to talk here instead.
Yes, and also joining us, a special guest, Peridium, aka Peridium from YouTube, is with us. Peridium, how you doing?
I'm good, Taran. I'm really good. Thank you guys for having me, first of all. Second of all, what a week to have me on for the first time, maybe not the last, but we'll see. This week of Big Brother 24, I'm trying to think of like a more chaotic, unpredictable. I feel like I'm pulling a slot machine lever, and whatever comes up is the numbers for the week for these players. I don't know. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about what's been going down for the past 5 days of Taylor's HOH train. There's been a reckoning of gameplay across the board. My numbers have been inflating with some players, like Jasmine's balloon, and then deflating as the week goes on, like the pool floaties in the have-not room. So that's where we are. Thank you.
By the way, I waited to say this till we were like live, but I love your content, by the way. Like, I've been watching your stuff, Peridium, for like years. So all your videos is they're just so good. So I just wanted to say
thank
that.
you.
And I'm very excited.
Thank you. That's really cool. I have to say, I've been watching you since you were first brought into RHAP. Many years ago. Like I was telling you guys before I went on, I've been watching the Roundtable way back when. Never once thought I would be talking here live, talking to both of you, and I'm excited to be here. And I feel like I'm on a roller coaster ride, and I'm in the very front seat. And it's weird. It's like normally I'm in the back or I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the craziness. What are they going to say about this and that and this move and that move? But I get to be a part of it now. So yeah, happy to be here.
Sometimes I still fall into that where like I'll hear Taran or whoever the guest is like talking during the roundtable, and I'll just be like, and I'll forget that like, oh yeah, I should say something too. I just keep like for whatever reason I'm like, yeah, I'm just listening to a podcast, just watching, and then it's like, oh wait,
oh no,
I'm actually here.
I hope I don't fall into that now, because now I'm listening, I'm watching you guys talk, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what I would give them if I was on the roundtable.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
then we're like,
me, oh god, I have to defend my. Yeah, anyway. Yeah.
Yes. Well, we are here to talk about, again, everything that is happening on the Big Brother 24 live feeds. And we will also be rating the players from 1 to 10 based on how well we think they are doing in the game this week. There's a lot to talk about this week, primarily because there's a lot that could happen next week, but also because we're kind of watching the fall of the leftovers. That's, It rose, and now it's time for it to fall, as the group has been disappearing without a trace. So a lot to get through here this week, as every single week, I think since the very beginning of the season, the top-rated spot for who do you want to win HOH next week has been Taylor by a large margin. It finally happened. And once again, as per usual with Big Brother, somewhere a monkey's paw like curled up, and we're like, oh no,
not this.
This is not what we wanted.
That's absolutely.
I kind of hope Taylor can compete next week, though. I kind of want it to keep going a little bit, but
just keep going forever. Yeah, I mean, I was so thrilled when Taylor won HOH. I know that, on the podcast when you guys were like live talking about the HOH competition, you guys had kind of come to the conclusion that it was probably better for Taylor not to win HOH this week, but I was still so excited for her, and I really thought, we can all sit back and relax. This is an easy week. We don't have to worry about anything. Very simple. And boy, were we wrong.
Yeah. We were wrong. And we've said this all week long. Like, we've all wanted to see, Taylor play, have some space to play the game, be able to, have some agency, have some power, really get a chance to like really get in there, get her hands dirty and play the game. It turns out it's not going so well, but still, I'm so glad that she had the chance, right? All the way going back all the way to week 1 when it looked like she was going out the door, and a lot of people were just like, man, just get her out of that situation. To be able to see her turn it around, send most of the worst offenders packing, now having some agency, having an HOH, and it's not like her game is over at this point. Wasn't a great HOH. Maybe not in the best spot moving forward, but she's still in here actually playing and having a chance to play. And I think that is so much better than where we were when we started. And also, she's given us some great TV this week. I mean, maybe not the best of games, but definitely what a week of feeds. Every single day, it's been another like step on the chain of ridiculousness, from the very beginning to the wanting to nominate her allies, to allies volunteering to nominate themselves, to wanting to target allies' showmances, to being chained and having to use an accent. It's been all over the place. So let's talk a little bit about how we got here. Because Taylor, of course, won the HOH. And the first thing that I mentioned is that she did have some ideas of her own to start the week. And those ideas were definitely a little shaky, as she immediately started promising safety to some of the other women not in the alliance. And then kind of told her alliance, like, hey, I want to put you up, Turner. And Turner was like, what if you didn't? And she was like, right. Okay. What if I did you and Monty? Is that better? And Monty was like, I don't think so. I think maybe the other direction. And so she finally landed on the right one. And then we had the whole Joseph saga of wanting to nominate himself, which I still don't fully understand what the point of it was, especially since he eventually backs off of it. But the reason he backed off of it was because they would be chained together and it wouldn't make any sense. And they didn't even end up being chained together until after the renom. And then also, I don't see how that makes a difference.
The whole thing doesn't make any sense. I mean, just so many bad moves or bad possibilities or bad thoughts, because this should be an easy week. I don't understand their logic in like, we have to hide this. Like, I mean, they're so in the majority. It should just be an easy, like, let's just nominate 2 people who are outside of our alliance. And if one of them wins veto and takes themselves off the block, we nominate the next person outside of our alliance. Like, it's that simple. And I don't understand, like, how this whole thing got so convoluted. And I get that, like, it appears to me that the reasoning for Joseph wanting to go onto the block was because he didn't want to have to, like, vote against Indy or something. But it's like, it's not worth it at that point. Like, one vote is not going to matter. Like, it just isn't. So I don't really understand the logic behind any of these moves or possibilities or anything. And the idea of like Taylor being like, Monty's still my target. I've been saying it all along. It's just stop with the charades and just, make the easy move. And I get that it's not flashy and I get that it's not that exciting, but like, just do it. Just why not? I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, I'm kind of glad that they didn't, though, because I feel like I've been glued to the feeds. I would normally be watching them, but I'd be like, really multitasking. But I'm like, I have to go upstairs for the rest of the night. Sorry, babe. I'm going to be upstairs up until like 5 a.m. on the East Coast, just watching these people make these questionable calls. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel like I've experienced somehow in the last 5 days, like 3 different story arcs from Taylor her original nominations, which was an interesting thing that you might see happen on any given week. And then that's kind of the thing of the week. It's like she kind of pissed off some allies, almost made a weird nomination thing, but then it course corrected and everything's fine. Then we had a potential unintentional backdooring of Joseph going up, and that was a whole fiasco for all of Saturday. That didn't end up happening. And then we had to deal with now the struggle of power between getting Alyssa on the block versus Alyssa not going on the block. And what is that going to mean? And then we're dealing with the aftermath now, post veto ceremony. I'm like, it just feels like there have been so many steps to get to where we are. And we still have to deal with Jasmine's birthday tonight. And I can't wait.
Boy.
I am so excited to see what that entails. And this is the precursor of last night with them finding the food and hiding the food and eating her food. And she's hiding other people's. It's like, what is going on? The air is making these people just make questionable calls all week. And I'm kind of here for it. And I can't wait to see what this twist is going to do with everything afterwards. So like, it couldn't have a better week leading into a fractured house, split down the middle, and there's all this tension bubbling up, and they can't really do anything because like the two weakest players in the cast are the ones on the block, arguably Indy and Terrence, and they're pretty indifferent to who goes. So we're left with just this big mess that this majority alliance made. And I do kind of wonder, I might be getting ahead, but talking about like, they never formed under normal Big Brother standards. They've always had the festy besties. This is the very first time that this alliance has actually operated playing regular Big Brother. Normally they've had to, and I don't know if that's factored in too much, but it's just like they've now had the chance to just nominate two of anyone without actually looking into the complications of having a side deal and having a third party, a third nominee. It's just regular Big Brother, and it is like, it's an absolute shit show. So.
Yeah, I actually think that's a good point, because previous to this, they haven't had to worry about like, oh, who's going to be the other nomination. It was like, okay, who's our target? Well, that person has to go up with whoever their festy bestie is. And typically their festy bestie was someone in their own alliance. So now that they have the opportunity to not put up someone in their own alliance, they're like, what do? We have to put up someone in our alliance. We have to. That's just the way it works. When really, like, it just doesn't make any sense to do that. And I get that they're trying to kind of conceal the fact that they're in an alliance, but I mean, there's only so far you can take that.
It's like pretty much the seven best players in the house are all in an alliance together up to this point. I get that they're used to having their own allies on the block, not even having a choice. So maybe that's partially what's fueling Joseph to want to go up, just to like more par for the course. But yeah, I walked into this week on Thursday night thinking this is probably a pretty easy week for Taylor. Like she didn't have to win this HOH, but I was really thinking we're going to get our first slow, pretty predictable, boring week of the show up to this point. And the moment I saw Taylor in the HOH by herself, the first people she was talking to was Terrence, was Indy, was Jasmine, was Alyssa. Those four back to back to back to back. And the thing she was saying, I was like doing the math, and I'm like, okay, the math isn't math. Who's going on the block now? Oh, Terrence. Who I'm like, oh, and then the rest of her alliance is downstairs organizing her week for her, kind of. And I'm like, they're not on the same page at this point. This is gonna become a thing, and it has become a thing. A lot of things.
Yeah, it was such a weird night because I really, like, as soon as Taylor won, I started thinking about, I mean, I did this whole thought process in my head about like, oh man, this is such an interesting week for Taylor, because the question is, should she take out Alyssa and weaken Kyle, or should she take out, anybody other than Alyssa on the other side to leave Kyle and Alyssa as, a target for the pound to worry about, and like all of these things. And like also with this split house coming up, like how many, how few enemies can she come away from this week with? And I had this whole strategy in my head for Taylor where she went to Kyle and was like, I'm going to keep Alyssa safe for you. Make sure that you like get her to be on board with keeping me safe in the future. And like making Kyle feel like, oh yeah, I've got Taylor on my side. Kyle, vouches for her with Alyssa, and now she takes out like Indy or something, and she only has to worry about like, Jasmine and Terrence winning in a, split house. And she's also like very, very well integrated in the alliance at that point. I'm like, okay, I think this is the play. It's a little bit risky because you're leaving Kyle in with Alyssa and he's got a lot of power, but and then it's just like from then until now, it's only been like 5 days, but the entire landscape is completely different. And definitely not better for Taylor, unfortunately, but it's also not better for most people in the alliance, unless your name, for my opinion at least, unless your name is Michael and Brittany, because Kyle is now dropped in the standings. Joseph has risen into the ranks of people being targeted, and Taylor has kind of been sort of shoved into a certain position here. It's just been such a weird week of strategy. As you know, I think Pretty, you're right to point out, like playing the game with Festy Besties was like playing it on easy mode. And now they're like having to actually play the real game of Big Brother, and it's pretty wild to see.
Yeah,
I feel like we've seen 3 iterations from Thursday to Friday to Saturday to the struggle of power on Sunday, leading into yesterday's veto ceremony. Yeah, it's fascinating. I felt like there's just been a season-wide nerf on the ratings for all. I was looking at last week's ratings for them, and I'm like, holy moly, Joseph was an 8.
I know. Literally, just last week, I was like tweeting out like Joseph is the best player in the house, and I'm like, well, who said that?
Like, I'm looking at them like, am I being too harsh this week based on? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, we'll find out, but yeah.
Well, the idea this was not a good week for anyone. I feel like nobody was like, I know you're saying Michael and Brittany, but I feel like everybody had their own like issues this week where it was not. I wasn't impressed by anyone. I'll say that.
Well, I think that'll be interesting to get to when it comes to the ratings, because I do think that I sort of have a slightly different perspective on that end. I have been very impressed with Michael and Brittany this week, and I think their position has dramatically improved from how it was before. And obviously, there are still some faults that I find in how they played the week. I think they could have done it cleaner, and it doesn't mean that they're not at any risk moving forward. But I do think that they are in a much better position than they were. And I'm very curious to see if it works out for them at this point. Go ahead.
Well, I also think that like for Michael and Brittany, I think it helps them. The people that they're playing with aren't like catching on necessarily, because I feel like there were so many situations where I was like, oh, Taylor is putting 2 and 2 together and realizing that like Michael and Brittany have been saying one thing, and like now Kyle and Taylor are gonna like turn on Michael and Brittany and realize that they were, pitting each other against each other and like, going into all this stuff and talking behind their backs, et cetera, et cetera. But then it was like, they questioned them about it and then was just like, oh yeah, I guess things just got mistranslated or whatever. And they didn't like fully hop onto the train of like, oh wait, they're playing me. Oh, they're trying to pit me and Kyle against each other. And I was kind of surprised that they didn't figure that out. And I think that because they didn't figure that out, I think Michael and Brittany are in like are in like a decent spot this week. But I think the way that they were playing to me was a little bit sloppy, just because like I do feel like someone should have picked up on that. But the fact that they didn't means that like good for them. But
yeah, I mean, I think part of it for me is that this week has definitely been sort of like, the leftovers are kind of splitting apart. And I think that for me, this week has been the most by far that I've, seen like updates on Twitter or, seen people talking about like what's happening in the house. And I'm like, whoa. And then I watch it for myself and I'm like, oh, in terms of the strategy, at least, like, I think that I saw probably at least 8 separate times, like separate instances of people. Oh, there it is. Michael and Brittany clocked. They're done. It's over for them. What sloppy game players. And then I watched the conversation and it's like, Taylor's like, no, don't worry, Brittany, I'll back you up. And it's like,
right. Yeah.
What was I reading? I
Like
don't
maybe
understand.
we are noticing it, but like Taylor's not noticing it, or at least she doesn't want to believe it. So she's not letting herself believe that like maybe they would go against her. Like it would, the lying was so obvious too when Brittany's like, really? He said that? That's weird. It was like, okay, like I absolutely like don't believe you for 1 second. But Taylor, you know, it seemed like she believed it. Maybe she doesn't in her own mind and she's like, you know, like, okay, I'm keeping you guys on notice or whatever. But like it seemed like she believed them and like was willing to just like chalk it up to just a misunderstanding or something. Or that like Kyle wasn't really telling the
Yeah,
truth.
and that's the thing too. Like I'm seeing like, oh, Kyle knows. He knows they screwed him. He's gonna target them. He's not gonna want to work with them. And then you're watching, and Kyle is like still very explicitly telling Michael about the pound. And he is divulging all of his information about Alyssa and when he wants to take a strike. And it's like, oh no, he's very clearly giving Michael and Brittany everything right now. Like, you know, it's been a tough week. It's definitely the week where I would say, you know, definitely be wary of what you're reading in terms of like the strategic maneuverings of people in the game. Come to your own conclusions, because it has definitely been a tough one, even just for me. I've had to focus entirely just on what I'm seeing on the feeds, because it's been tough to like, I can't let the other stuff get in my head and impact like what I'm interpreting from the feeds, because I feel like sometimes I'm seeing a completely different, you know, a series of events.
Yeah. Oh, I've totally noticed that. That's been something that I've noticed all season, where it's like you're looking at Twitter and you're reading the updates on what's going on, like people's commentary on it. And then you're like, oh, wow, this is crazy. I need to go check out the feeds. And then when I watch the conversation for myself, I'm like, oh, it didn't seem like that crazy. I don't really know what's going on here. I didn't really see what they were commenting on. So I do think that like someone who like purely gets their updates from Twitter, like in terms of like the commentary that people are providing around what's going on in the house, versus actually just like sitting down and just watching the conversations themselves. You'll have two completely different views on what's going on in the house. It's kind of wild.
It's interesting because I haven't really been using Twitter too much this week. I've been mostly watching the feeds, so my perspective is a little different as well. So to hear, I do know like Taylor's definitely everyone's darling. The fan base is darling. Probably looks like the producer's darling at this point. And I've been rooting for her so hard. So like she comes into this week and it starts out rocky. And I think she's sort of gone up and down the waves of wild gameplay, largely because of the influence of a lot of other players in the house, not so much some things that she has done. And we can talk about Taylor when we get to her. But I'm also noticing that like the gameplay is it shifts so quickly the last 5 days, and the plans and the players are throwing things at the wall, and even they're confused half the time. It seems a lot of different people are there's a lot of swirling going on between the people in power. I can't even imagine what it's like to be the people who are on the outside of the leftovers. They don't have any idea what's happening around them. So I can kind of understand, like, because it's so complicated, it feels complicated, at least from my perspective. There are times where I feel like something shifts so quickly, and I was away from the feeds for just a couple hours, and I come back and I go back and I rewind and I catch up, and I'm like, okay, I get what's happening. I understand, but I don't fully understand still. Like, you know, Brittany originally wanting Alyssa out and pushing that forward. I think she was the originator, and then became the push, the momentum, and then that switched because they talked to Kyle, and then they're like, oh, Kyle really doesn't want to do that. Okay, we're gonna switch directions now, and it flips so quickly. That allegiances in the fan base flip so quickly, and I just have to imagine it's tough, especially if you're only getting updates from social media, to try to understand the complicated, like, moment-to-moment nuance of people playing many different types of games, between the floating game of Brittany and Michael to the loyal to the end game of Joseph, who wants to get nominated. And then you've got the other people who are not even involved. Oh, and then you've got Kyle, who is in the 7, in the pound, and yet at the same time is ready to strike, and he's sort of being weaponized, being built up to be a take a shot at the other side of the house, or at the other side of the alliance. There's a lot of little moving parts happening, and I mean, we're still on Tuesday. We don't know what it's going to look like, so I can kind of see why it's getting complicated online. it's hard for me even a little bit to follow it, and I've just been watching the feeds constantly the last 5 days. So yeah, that's maybe my take on it.
Yeah, it's been very interesting, and of course, none of this necessarily means that that my perspective is the right one. Like I'm definitely feeling like Michael and Brittany are in a very good place right now, in terms of where things stand, but I do think that could change, and I think a lot of people are a little more doom and gloom about how long this can last for them, which is certainly possible. But it's definitely been a wild ride of a week on a lot of different fronts. So and then again with this upcoming split house, so many things can happen. There are literally like 250 permutations of like
252.
combinations of different outcomes that can happen with the groupings. And since it's a final five scenario, basically anybody can be like any combination of players can be left on the block post veto. Because the veto can alter or can force any combination of two people onto the block. So like if somebody's HOH, they nominate two people, the person off the block wins the veto, then they can now force the third person who is not on the block onto the block. And all of a sudden, you've now got two people on the block who may never have ended up on the block together in any circumstance at all. And so you've just got like literally not a single person is safe moving into the split house. I don't think, like, I can think of a scenario where every single person in this house is deadlocked to go home based on the groupings and the competition results. And that's a wild scenario to be in moving into next week.
I was just going to say, I saw on Twitter, somebody did the math. There's 252 permutations of possible 5-person teams. And that doesn't even account for who's the HOH. There's even more permutations just from that 252 for which of those 5 is going to have the power, and then also the veto, and then also their nomination decisions, and then the veto decisions. There are thousands of potential outcomes. And yeah, like I was trying to do the math and I gave up because it's just, there's too much happening. But it looks like, I mean, I could order them based on who I think is most safe to least safe of the 10, excluding Indy. But ultimately, like, it's not often we go into a final 10 of a season of Big Brother and we're like, anyone could go. Think of this last year, or BB22, where you've got like the committee running the game. You've got the cookout running the game. You've got the, well, I don't know, but at this point you had Jack getting voted out, I guess. So that's a little bit up in the air, but like level 6 running the game, Paul's minions running the game. It's like, we are in a very unique week. We're about to hit a precipice I've never experienced anything like this really, where anyone can go. Most likely there are some players who I would bet money aren't going to be in any jeopardy of going, but I was talking to Aman yesterday about this for a couple hours, and I'm like, I am so excited about hopefully what we can get, and then of course I'll be incredibly let down by what we do get, but I'm so excited to like potentially have just a wild outcome with, it might crack the game wide open. We've had a lot of pressure building this week, the last 5 days. Or it could run the course and it's just like flushing a double eviction and we've got 2 more of the outsiders gone, like we've seen on Survivor where they have a pagonging and we just get rid of 2 of the outsiders. We get closer to the actual core. We can somewhat compare this to Survivor even. I did look at the Survivor history because they've done this twist 4 times actually, to see like how often does the majority take a shot at itself when you split them into 2 groups. And it happens more than it doesn't happen. For Survivor's sake, I don't know what that's worth. Probably not worth a ton, but historically, more often a majority gets sniped from other majority players because there's only 5 people voting. So
it's interesting stuff. Hopefully they don't screw it up by allowing the players to choose themselves.
Yeah, that.
Oh God, I hope not.
I really hope they don't do that too. I thought like maybe this will be okay, but then I realized no, them picking who they want would produce the worst outcome because it'll be the most boring outcome, I guess.
Yeah, it's like if you take those different, all those different combinations of groupings, if you allow them to pick themselves, you're eliminating most of the best outcomes for television, in my opinion. That you're basically allowing them to set up, like tee up their shot instead of having to like figure it out on the fly.
Which means that's what we're gonna get.
I know.
It's like the Festy Besties. It's like, oh, if the majority alliance wasn't very likable, this would be awful. Like 3 weeks of like watching our
Right. If we were rooting
underdogs
for the
getting clipped.
underdog,
Yeah.
that would be terrible.
So it worked, but at what cost?
Yeah. So yeah, I spent probably too much time doing math today, especially too much time because it does. There's not really a lot that you can learn from the different like math equations that you can do, just because like there's too many possible outcomes to really glean too much from it. The basics, I believe, if I'm doing the math correctly, are that like just under 10% chance that that like the leftovers will all be grouped together in one group, and then all of the outsiders will be grouped in another group with 2 of the other remaining leftovers. So that's not super likely, not super unlikely, but not particularly likely that would happen. Much more likely is that there will be some combination of one person from the remaining 3 non-leftovers in one group and 2 of the remaining non-leftovers in the other group. So that's about where that stands, I believe, and it's an interesting spot. It's an interesting spot. There's so many different ways that we can go with this. I do want to run through a list of who we think is safest to least safe. I had the same as Ryan here. Around 8% is what I had. I'm not a mathematician though, so I could very well be wrong in all of my mathings, but very interesting stuff. I did ask the audience who they thought was most in danger for the split house twist. So not exactly a full ranking of like most in danger to least in danger necessarily. They all picked one person that they thought was most in danger. But it was a very even split for most of the players. So there, let's exclude, I did have to include Indy just in case, but excluding Indy, 7 of the players are separated by 9% of the vote. So it's all over the place. People, again, like this could really go anywhere. So according to the audience, they believe that Brittany, Terrence, and Turner are the 3 safest people in the house. I'm not sure that I agree completely with Terrence.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the one in there that I'm kind of like.
I have Turner and Brittany both in my top 2, but I don't have Terrence there.
Yeah, I would also have Turner and Brittany in my top 2. I think that they are the 2 least likely to be targeted, both because they are in the leftovers, so they have the leftover protection, and then even within the leftovers, they should be far enough down on everyone's list that they are safe in most circumstances. Basically, the only way to be completely lock safe in this twist is if you are like 7th on the list of people that, or maybe 8th on the list of people that somebody would target, like that also, everyone would target.
Or if you win HOH or veto.
Right, or you win a comp.
Also, I wouldn't say Terrence is top 7 or 8 to win those, but maybe he will.
Because basically, like, you could have a person who has targets 1 through 5 all on a team that's not their team. And then, okay, now I'm on target number 6, and that person wins a safety, and maybe they use that safety to protect somebody else, and then somebody else wins the veto. Like, it really doesn't even matter. You could be down to, it's literally just like you or them, or you and like you're choosing between the last 2 remaining people possible, that your closest person and your second closest person. So it really, like, there's no escaping it. But I do think that Turner and Brittany are at the lowest position on the target list for most people. But that does not mean that they are completely out of the woods. I do think that for Turner in particular, I think what's good for Turner is that Taylor is the least likely person, I think, to win an HOH, mostly because we don't know if she'll be able to compete. But I do think Taylor is probably the most likely person to target Turner, because he is probably roughly like third on her list of people to target within the leftovers, which is, I think, the highest of anybody else. And then for Brittany, I think she's really low on most people's lists. I think the worst that she could get it is if, somebody takes the shot at Michael and misses, and then it lands on Brittany. But I don't think a lot of people would do that or would even bother taking out Brittany, even if they did miss on Michael, because there'd probably be another option there. Michael would probably be the backup for most people unless they were absolutely forced to. And if Brittany were there without Michael, which she has like a roughly close to 50% chance of not being on a team with Michael, I think she's almost lock safe. So I do think that those two are very safe. Peridium, who else do you have in the safe positions?
I mean, the bottom three are, I think the three outsiders are for sure up there as most likely to get taken out. Alyssa,
Yep.
Jasmine. But other than that, I had Turner at the very least, Brittany. I haven't ranked them, but I mean, I can just process elimination. Like, actually, it might have been possibly Taylor or Michael. Maybe Michael.
I would also have Taylor and Michael. I think that so the scenarios I see Michael leaving are like, say for instance, because the thing is too, it almost doesn't even matter who the HOH is at times, because there's not many options of people to nominate. But if you look at it as, who is going to be the majority in the group for, like, that will be making the decisions, I think a group of like Monty and Turner controlling the outcome in a group, I think they would, if they had to, if there weren't any outsider options, they would probably decide to evict Michael or even Taylor if she was available, and was the one of the only people that they could target. But I think those are the two people and the few like scenarios where Turner or Taylor would go. I think in most other circumstances they would be pretty good to be okay. Taylor, I think, has Joseph in front of her, as well as Monty to a degree. And I think that not a lot of people would take the shot yet at Michael. He has all of the leftovers in front of him. And unlike Joseph and Taylor, who may have Kyle looking to actively take a shot, Michael doesn't have anybody in the leftovers, I think, that would take a shot unless they absolutely had to, which is already pretty unlikely. And then once he gets to that unlikely situation, he would need to lose a competition and lose two competitions, I should say. And it would have to be the wrong combination of leftovers to be stuck into a group with. So I think that is also pretty low on the list of possibilities. So yeah.
I also don't know for sure how every person of the remaining 10 are feeling about every other person as far as like where they would rank their boot order. So I'm not sure if it comes down to it and the votes come in and there's only 2 votes because it's the final 5. If it's between, say, Taylor and Brittany, like who's picking who and why, and you have a whole week too. This isn't even like a double eviction normally. So how does that play into our analysis of, is one player going to be better long-term strategizing throughout the rest of the week versus in the fly, like, making a snap decision and convincing Monty to keep Taylor over Brittany or something, where they're over, instead of having 5 days to talk about it. Another thing I'm really curious to see how this week's going to pan out. Like, what's it look like? Is it just a regular week with 2 final 5s happening simultaneously? But yeah, there's just a lot of I don't 100% know where a lot of these players stand as far as the strategy versus the, I know Joseph really likes to hang out with Taylor, but would he prioritize Taylor over, a couple of other players in the 7 when push comes to shove and he's got no choice? It's a 50-50 between a leftover and Taylor, who's, I don't know. It's like, does he want it? I think he does. I think he would, but then where does Monty stand? You have to go through all these people. It's a role that's just constantly. So yeah, you could do thousands of just crunching the numbers, and at some point I start to lose the plot and
Yeah,
Realize I'll let fate figure it out. I'll react. That's gonna be my contribution.
well, especially because it also matters again, like who else is in the group. Like, you can look at Turner. Okay, Turner is always going to target an outsider first. He's going to target Jasmine number 1, Terrence number 2, Alyssa number 3. Easy, you would think, right? But then it's like, okay, but what if he can't target an outsider? What if he has to shoot within the leftovers? Well, he's made it pretty clear that Taylor and Michael are at the top of his leftover hit list. Which one of those people does he target? Well, if he's in a group with Monty there, he probably targets Michael if Michael is available over Taylor. If he's in a group where Kyle is there and not Monty, he probably targets Taylor first over Michael because Kyle will be there or Monty will be there to influence him in one direction or the other. If neither of them are there, who knows? And maybe he doesn't even have the option. Maybe he's stuck in a group where he has to target Taylor of the leftovers because the only other people in the group are Pound members, or maybe he has to target Michael because the only other people in the group are Pound. Like the consistency of the group itself matters a lot. So that's a wild situation. So yeah, I think Turner and Brittany, the top 2. I think Michael and Taylor are the next 2. I think that then you have Joseph, Monty, and Kyle. I would put Kyle the next safest personally, because Joseph and Monty are not currently looking to take a shot within the leftovers, whereas Kyle is, I think, going to be looking to take a shot at the leftovers. And so, not to mention the fact that I think that, Kyle has Alyssa kind of like in front of him as a target. I think Monty and Joseph are the most vulnerable of the leftovers heading into this twist. And then I think all 3 of the outsiders are vulnerable. Jasmine being the most vulnerable, followed by Terrence, followed by Alyssa. I think it's probably the third, the least likely of the outsiders to leave, but still very likely to be cut here. So that would be my personal list. The audience thinks that Kyle is the most vulnerable, which I'm not sure that I agree with, but I get the sentiment.
I kind of could see, like, when the twist reveals itself, maybe something triggers in Monty and Joseph, depending on the team setup as well. Like, maybe they think, you know what? Like, maybe we can spare Terrence. They haven't given us any indication that they're going to yet, but there is still 2 more days. And then it's very possible, because they've got a whole week next week to do this, if Kyle is on the chopping block and they have the votes to possibly send him out, I could see it potentially happening. So I'm not too sour on the idea of Kyle being one of the more exposed players. They have had a lot of frustrations with him over the past few days. But I would right now say that because they're currently not talking about taking a shot at Kyle right now at the final 10, at the final 9, I don't think that that's going to happen yet. But I mean, information's been flying at us the last 5 days. So these numbers have been just moving up and down constantly.
Mm-hmm. The audience then thinks Jasmine is second most vulnerable, followed by Monty and Joseph. So kind of close there, followed by Alyssa. Again, these are all by very, very close margins. I mean, Kyle's at 19%, Jasmine at 16, Monty at 13, Joseph at 12, Alyssa at 12, and then Taylor and Michael at both at 10% toward the bottom. So I think the audience is mostly with us here, with just a couple of little differences, and not by that much votes either. Melissa, what are your thoughts on all this?
This is all too much for me, I gotta say. Yeah, like all these permutations and iterations of what could possibly happen. I'm sad. I'll leave that to you guys. I'll just comment on what's actually going on. That's what I have to say about that.
All right. Well, I also asked the audience who they want to win HOH next week. Again, it has been pretty consistently Taylor for the entire season, but now it can't be Taylor, or at least we think it probably can't be.
Could
Taylor. I guess that's another question we can talk about. I guess there's not too much to talk about, but like, do we think Taylor will compete in HOH? Because I don't think she will.
I was going to say I don't think so. Because it's only 1 round that she's participating in and not 2. I feel like they won't give her that benefit of the doubt. But if they wanted to help her, like, sure. I don't know if they would do the same. Like, if producers want to give her the chance at safety, I mean, hey, go for it, because it's a weird twist. But because she's only participating in one of the final 5 thingamajigs, then I would probably say no. But I feel like that's probably, I've been like, is it more fair to let her play or not let her play based on this twist? And I'm sort of either or, I don't know.
I think it's because it's different than a triple eviction where one person gets to evict 2 people, and the person that doesn't get to play in that eviction is basically missing out on a full round of Big Brother where they are then vulnerable. The difference here is that even though Taylor is technically missing out on a round of Big Brother, it's a round that she couldn't have competed in anyway and isn't vulnerable for that other group. Right. So not to say that the producers have any level of like thought of that detail when it comes to fairness in their game. But I do think that that she probably won't compete. Although, like, if this is the kind of decision they make on the fly, I think Taylor is probably the person most likely that they would be willing to be like, actually, she does compete. That's what we definitely always were going to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I don't know if I read this from like an actual source or just like someone on Twitter, but so like I'll preface it with that. But someone was saying that they're going to do an HOH competition, and then the person who gets first is HOH of the inside, and the person who gets like second is HOH of the outside, or like the person who's like lasts the longest or something, and then the person who's second lasts longest. I don't know if that's like a legit thing. But that was what I was going off of. And so if that's the case, then you would think like maybe she would be allowed to compete because it's just one singular like HOH and it determines whether you're inside or outside.
I would think she's even less likely to compete in that because then it's just a single HOH that she normally would be sitting out of.
Yeah, maybe not. But then like it would, I don't know. I guess like it all depends, I think, to me, like how they determine what the 2 sides are. If it's like a schoolyard pick kind of thing, then like you would think that she'd be able to compete. And I hope it's not a schoolyard pick, but I hope it's just like totally randomized and they just like
I hope
divide them up.
Put their hand in a bag, grab their chip.
Yeah, like reveal the chip. Yeah.
You're on team A, you're on team B. It's that simple. I think I would see it probably if I did bet. It would be most likely they have a single competition and like the top 2 are HOHs, and then I don't know from there what they would do, but I feel like that's par for their course.
I would have assumed that too, but we do have a 2-hour episode on Thursday.
That's true.
And so like, I almost feel like that's a lot of time to fill, and wouldn't they love to put 2 competitions in?
Well, they got a lot of Kylissa footage this week to get there. So.
Oh yes, they have a lot to use.
It's all part of the script. They knew it was coming.
Well, the audience would love to see Joseph win an HOH. I don't know that Joseph would love to see Joseph win an HOH, though, and that's one of my main concerns with Joseph here. But Joseph is the top vote getter of who they want to see win HOH, followed by Turner, and then Brittany. So those are the top 3 here.
I feel like Turner would take out. Wouldn't he potentially gun if it comes to it? Taylor. I guess
I don't think people realize that.
I feel like Taylor's lowest, his highest priority of the leftovers. You know.
Yeah.
I think I'd be most interested in seeing a Brittany HOH because I feel like we don't get a lot of her with like having power or agency or anything like that. It's kind of just her like bouncing ideas off of Michael and then kind of like talking to other people. I would like to see what she would do as the HOH, and because I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I if she had the option, she would definitely target Jasmine. I think the question is that, like, what if she doesn't have the option?
How does she do it? Like, I feel like I'd also be interested to see her having conversations with people and like if she can do anything with that, or if it's just kind of like, well, I'm just gonna target this person. You know, I don't know. I'd like to see her put herself in a good position.
Yeah. Well, I asked the audience who they want to see evicted this week. 62% said Indy over Terrence. But I'm personally reading this poll to be mostly indifference.
Yeah.
The audience is kind of like, well, we think it's probably going to be Indy, so yeah, might as well.
I think for me, like, Indy has said that she's going to quit the game and stuff like that. And she's also, you know, just been like really nasty. Like, not that Terrence has been like all that great to Taylor or anything, but like Indy has been particularly like bad. And so I'm really more than okay with having Indy leave. And if she decides to quit the jury house, that's fine. I don't care. So yeah.
Yeah, there's some weird poetic justice for Indy not really being on Big Brother US, but literally being on Big Brother US, just not there. And then also coming for the whole summer hangout vibe and then being locked in the jury house by herself for a whole week. And then also threatening to, potentially quit on jury, which is very unusual for Big Brother. You don't see that very often. So yeah, I'm pretty indifferent too. I'm like, these are two, they're not really movers or shakers at this point. They've lost their, I mean, Indy never really was in the first place, but
like at least Terrence does something. Like, not that I like it, not that I like anything that he's doing, but at the very least, like, it does seem like he's trying. He did all that clownery with Daniel. Like, I'd prefer to see that than to see nothing except for just like nastiness. So like, I mean, Indy's just been like kind of just mean, and I don't
right.
know.
I don't think either are gonna win. I'm not really too worried about either of them doing too much. So I'm kind of like,
right.
It's indifference.
Yeah. I asked the audience how they feel about the Kyle and Alyssa Showmance this week. We're still tracking the Showmance meter here. Last week, 91.5% were hashtag just eat a muffin instead. This week, 88% are hashtag send the floaty out to sea. Over hashtag Kyla's forever. So they've gained some fans.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wait, they gained 3%?
Yes. Love them.
What?
Wow.
Oh, that's wild.
They're officially boyfriend and girlfriend. They've consummated their relationship on a floaty.
Wow.
The 3% are into it.
Yeah.
Dear Lord.
Wow. It's great.
I like the gain in percentage. I think that's it's tickling me the most, just knowing that they
people are probably like, what did the floaty do wrong, Taran? We don't want to throw the floaty out to sea. So they're pro floaty, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't account for the floaties out there.
Yeah, we didn't account for the pro floaty contingency.
Okay.
So I decided to go ahead and just change the HOH question again, because I kind of wanted to separate this out. So instead of just do you agree with like the decisions that Taylor made as the HOH, I separated out into rate her HOH reign as a whole, like as an HOH, what is her grade? And then specifically with her nominations, did you agree with her nominations for her game? Because I think that for me, at least, this was a situation where I think she landed eventually on the right nominations for herself. But so I would have said, yes, I agree with those decisions. But as a whole, not a good grade, not a good rating. So the audience said that Taylor's HOH reign was a 3.7 out of 10. And 70% disagreed with her nominations being the best nominations for her game. So not great.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately the nominations are good, but I think the way that she went about it was not good for her. It was just too hectic, too many, variations, too much like, what if we did this? What if we did that? Here's the new target. Here's the new this. And it gets to be too much. And I know that she, brought this up to her alliance and she asked like, hey, I hope like I haven't been, making you guys it hasn't been too flip-floppy and you guys are okay with everything I've been doing. I've just been trying to, make sure that we're like talking about it and we're just, making sure that we've covered all bases and looked at all targets. And I get that may have been the intention, but I think, and I know that Monty and all of them were like, no, you're good. But clearly she's not good. And like, they obviously felt a certain way about it because they've been talking about it behind her back. And I tend to agree with them that, it's just too much. It's too chaotic. You don't want to have this back and forth kind of HOH. You want, especially for an easy week, it should just be a simple, like, these are the two nominations. If it has to be changed, it has to be changed. Luckily, Kyle won the veto, so we don't need to change it. Let's just move on. And that really wasn't what happened. And I just think that the way that she handled this week was just too chaotic. As much as I love Taylor and as much as I was so excited for her to win HOH, it was a lot. And if I was her alliance, I probably would trust her less after this week.
I do just feel like a lot of it is swirling from a lot of allies in her ear. Like she herself isn't so she's in power. She hasn't been like the worst, and she's not. I don't think coming out of this in the worst place ever. It's just to get to what should have been a very easy outcome. It took a lot of steps to get there, and that was sort of for me the tricky part with my rating for her this week. Again, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but. I don't know. I guess a 3.7 is understandable. I'd say like the biggest issue I had was just the other players have lost a little bit of faith in her ability to manage an HOH and then decide their fate going forward when it gets down to the nitty gritty and you have, not so many extra non-leftovers to deal with. What's Taylor going to do? And if this isn't any indication, it's showing like she's going to be able to be flipped pretty easily or just taken in a certain direction for any reason. Again, it just started with me. I just didn't love the very beginning of the HOH when she promised like all the women's safety. I'm like, you're doing a little too much too soon. You should be doing this at the end of your HOH week, planning for the next week, not at the beginning when you're like limiting, you're putting too many limiters on what you're able to get away with.
Right. And a lot of the time she was like, when she was doing this, she was like, or like when she was making decisions throughout the week, she was saying like, I need to make sure like I have a good face for the women. Like I put on a good front for the women, like, so that way they think I'm with them. And it's like, no, you don't. Like those women are not with you. They don't care about you at all. You shouldn't be promising safety. You shouldn't be like, protecting them in any way. Unless it's like fake, like the whole Alyssa thing now where she's like, I would never have put you on the block. I don't know why he was thinking that. Like that stuff is good. But the stuff where it was like, well, I have to put Joseph so that they think that I'm not with you, or I have to tell them I'm backdooring Monty. And it's like, don't worry about that. Like they're not with you. They know you're not with them. Just like focus on yourself, focus on your own game. Like, don't worry about them. I don't know. Just too much thought about that.
Well, I asked the audience to finally rate the bestie twist now that it's finally over. It's been a pretty consistent 2.9 or 2.8, but now that it's over, the audience moved up a little bit. They gave it a 3 out of 10 overall. I guess, again, it didn't really lead to anything catastrophic. The season has been good despite the bestie twist. I still think it's a 1. I still think it's one of the worst twists they've ever done. It didn't have a bad ultimate result, I think, because of the events that occurred to sort of like negate some of the ill effects of a bestie twist. But it is absolutely like, if I were to rate it as like how it went, yeah, I think a 3 is fine. I don't think it contributed anything to the season, but it luckily didn't screw anything up too bad. But if I were to rate it as a twist removed from this situation, if I were to say like rate all of the twists and which ones you would like to see back, I never want to see this thing again, ever, ever, ever. Please do not. It will definitely ruin a season at some point.
Yeah, I don't want to see Backstage Boss. I don't want to see the bestie twist. And so I'm worried that like this coming twist could be the same vein. Maybe it's going to be a bad twist, but it'll work out and it'll be really fun to watch. That's what I'm hoping. But yeah, I would give it also a 1. I just looked at that and I went, God, if it wasn't for the natural, like the narrative arc that worked in our favor, this is a bit of an unusual story for the pre-jury of this season. Most seasons, this would just be, it would absolutely crush the underdogs more than they usually are. It's like putting the boot harder on them instead of taking it off or something. And that's sort of par for the course for Big Brother. And it just happened to the stars aligned at like the right time for it to work out. And then the comps worked out and we got out like the least likable people in the house back to back. Unfortunately, we lost Amira, who probably could have been an interesting player if she had lasted longer. I would have swapped her for probably another player like maybe Jasmine or Terrence or Indy, who are just not that dynamic, don't have much potential to shake things up. So I do feel a little bit bad that we lost the potential in Amira early, but ultimately I just don't want to see this twist. Pairs have never been a good thing in my opinion in Big Brother. Anytime they show up, I don't love it. Big Brother 9, Big Brother 13. I don't like all these people getting safety for no reason. I don't like 3 nominees. I'm like, I don't know. It's like, I don't want to be too much of like a stick in the mud, but like most of the twists when it comes to screwing with the formula Big Brother, it's so fragile and it oftentimes doesn't work out in the way that I personally like it to. So I don't know.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Well, I asked the audience to rate the episodes this week. They gave the episodes a 6.3, down from the 7.1 last week. The feeds they gave a 7.1, which is actually up 1 point from last week, which was a 7.0. And then the season as a whole so far, also a 7.1, down from the 7.2 last week. The season as a whole has been steadily rising over the last 5 weeks, but this is the week where we finally have plateaued for the audience ratings, which is interesting because I actually feel like this week has been wild. Maybe not what I wanted in terms of like seeing Taylor succeed, but definitely has been very interesting. So. But that's kind of where the audience is at right now in the season. And hopefully we just continue to have. I mean, look, 7 still very good in terms of Big Brother ratings. So hopefully we stay there.
Yeah, I mean, I have messy favorites. I'm happy with Taylor. Ultimately, like, I think she's not in that bad of a spot. And so even though it was a messy week, this has probably been one of my favorite weeks of the season, maybe my favorite to watch. But it has been. There's been a lot. Like, I would rather have a complicated, strategic, emotional game going on than like a very boring, like just, I don't know, flaccid week of just nothing happening.
Yeah.
And it's like, we know exactly what's happening on Thursday night. We can just fast forward to next Thursday already. Like, that's the pits. So we're not there.
Totally.
All right. Finally, I had the audience rank the players from their favorite to their least favorite. Do we have a guess at who is at the top of the list? Who is the audience's favorite player?
Jasmine.
I say Turner.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think he's actually up there. I think it's going to be like Taylor or Michael. They've just been like dominating the
Melissa, you got to
favorites
lock one in.
Turner.
Okay. Peridium?
I'll take Taylor just to have a different option.
Melissa, you're correct. Turner
What?
has taken the top spot.
Oh
from
my God.
dead last for 2 weeks in a row.
Wow.
Turner has taken the top spot on the favorite list.
That is wild. I had no
Yeah.
idea. I really thought I was just like being like, whatever, Turner, just because I'm his #1 fan. So I was like, whatever. But yeah, wow. Good for him. He deserves it.
He
He's
dropped
great.
his boot. He dropped his boot in the pool. That was really
That was so
unfortunate.
funny.
It was really funny.
Those are nice boots though. But yeah, like I felt so bad. It was just like
He was
plop.
talking to like Megan, I think, and then he actually dropped. And the sound effect sounded fake, but it's real. And I'm like,
It did sound fake.
It was really great. So I could
Pulls
see
it out and
Turner.
he flips it upside down and all the water just comes out of it. It's like a cartoon or something.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yes. Turner in the top spot, followed by Taylor and Michael, #2 and 3.
I like how Ryan in the chat is like, remember when we clowned Melissa for liking Turner? How fast things change. Well, that's right. Maybe everyone should start listening to me. I know what I'm talking about. I can see the future of
I feel like I remember you saying, I don't like him. I just like his voice.
I said I'm not into him because everyone was saying that I'm in love with him.
Oh, wow.
And I was saying, okay, it's just his voice, okay? At the time. And then I realized, oh my God, it's
It was more than just the voice.
It's more than just the voice.
Yeah.
It's great.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All
That's
right.
fire. That's fire.
That's fire. You got to start somewhere,
Who's at the bottom of the list? Who's in last place here?
Jasmine?
Indy.
You're both wrong. It's Terrence.
Really?
Yeah.
The tattoo.
I mean, yeah, interesting. I don't know. I thought Jasmine who was last week? Do you know?
Last week it was Daniel.
Oh,
And,
okay,
and
well, that's
above
obvious.
Daniel was Terrence.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, I guess. And to be fair, I have Jasmine higher than I wouldn't have her in dead last, but because she is providing the kooky entertainment that I live for. So I'm here for that. But yeah, Terrence, okay, he's kind of there.
The full list here: Turner, Taylor, Michael, Joseph, Brittany, Monty, Alyssa, Kyle, Indy, Jasmine, Terrence. So for the first time since the leftovers got together, somebody has broken through the top 7. Alyssa has managed to break through the top 7 and surpass Kyle into the top 7 favorite house guests in this poll.
Was it by 3%?
It was by 0.3.
Oh wow!
In terms of the average rating. So there you go. All right. So that's the player rankings, but now we have to talk about the player ratings. Oh boy. Difference between rankings and ratings. This is the part of the podcast where we rate the players from 1 to 10 based on how well we think they're doing in the game. I tend to look at it as some combination of long-term prospects to win, short-term safety in the game, and just how they played this week. What kinds of decisions did they make? Did they, say, volunteer for the block for no reason? That might lower their rating. Did they do something like not volunteer for the block? That might raise their rating. We'll have to wait and see. So let's pull it up here. Let's talk about the stock watch. Here's what we've got. We're going to start this week with our HOH, Taylor. How do we feel about Taylor's game this week? Last week, she got straight 7s. And here's the thing. Look at all these 7s. So many 7s. It was a dominant alliance. And they were in a dominant position. And we were just waiting to see how it was all going to break apart. And once it broke apart, we're going to see some people are going to go up. Some people are going to go down. That's the natural sort of cadence of how this works. Unfortunately, I think Taylor here is probably going to go down. In terms of short-term safety, I think she's not that, not that much in danger. Again, she's one of like maybe the top 4 safe people in the house, which is like the top, top 50% or so of safe people in the house. That said, she can't compete in HOH, and that's like not the best thing in the world. Or she might not be able to compete in HOH, which is not the best thing in the world. Long-term prospects, though, I think have faded a little bit, mostly because she has, obtained this now public perception that she is locked in with Joseph. Now, in some ways, that could work out for her, because if Joseph survives, if both her and Joseph survive this split house, then she'll be at the final 8 with Joseph, hopefully locked in. As long as Joseph is actually loyal to her, which I feel like he might be, then that's not a bad place to be. But both her and Joseph have to survive to get there in the first place. And I also feel like the way that she's handled this week, she's not really done herself any favors when it comes to jury votes within the leftovers. Turner has felt disappointed by her HOH reign. It feels like this was too chaotic. Didn't love it. And even Michael and Brittany are kind of like, oh, she's not really as good at this as we hoped she would be. And that doesn't speak super well for her prospects to win this game, because she's really reliant on the leftover votes in that final 2 spot. So I don't love the damage dealt to her long-term prospects. And then in terms of the decisions that she's made this week, starting from the beginning, the decision to promise safety to the women, and then to talk about nominating her allies, and then to go along with Joseph's scheme of putting himself on the block, and even just the way she talked about it with Brittany, where she's like, I don't really understand it. You just need to have Joseph tell you. He can explain it better than I can. I'm not really able to explain it myself. Then, like, why are you doing it? And then after that, she gets off of that play, and she instead decides she wants to push Kyle into nominating his Showmance, which he obviously was not going to do. And even when he made it clear that he wasn't going to do it, at least in my opinion, she kept pushing. Not intentionally. She was willing to back down, but with enough encouragement, she ended up kept pushing. And I think this is part of why Michael and Brittany are getting away with this, is because it doesn't really matter if they played both sides. At the end of the day, it was Joseph and Taylor that were pushing, and Kyle that was not backing down. They went too far to care about who did what in the middle. That they have really drawn a line, and they've both kind of said as much privately. And none of those things should have happened. It was just, oh man, it was bad on every level, in my opinion. I think that a lot of damage has been done to her game. I kind of agree with the audience when they rated her HOH reign at around a 3. I think that I have to give Taylor a 3 this week. I think that this was very, very bad. A lot of bad decisions. Like, this wasn't just one bad decision. It was like 3 or 4 different bad decisions. And I really do not like the way that the game has gone for her, unfortunately. I think that she can bounce back from this, especially if she survives this split house. But this was a rough week, and I hope that she bounces back. But yeah, not great. Melissa, what are your thoughts?
I'm honestly shocked by the rating. I mean, like, I'm only shocked by it just because, like, my thought was, like, I think I'm going to go really low. And so then I was like, oh, God, I'm going to be, like, the lowest one. And now I feel good. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because I was like,
what are you going to do?
I mean, I hate this, too, because I absolutely love Taylor. And, like, it's not like I don't like her after this week. I love her still. No questions about that. But this week was just so rocky, like, and just like totally made me lose faith in her as like a decision maker, I think, and knowing what's best for her game. It made me question everything in terms of like the way she's playing the game. I think this week she was just so chaotic when it didn't need to be chaotic. A lot of her alliance members have lost trust in her. Or have, kind of said like, okay, I don't know if we should be taking her along that far. Like, let's see what happens here. Because, I mean, you're totally right, Taran. Like, I mean, first of all, like, and I know we keep reiterating this, but like, why start the conversations with the other side of the house? 1-1-1-1-1, promising safety to all of them, talking about how you want to work with the women and all this sort of stuff, talking about how like you won't nominate Jasmine because she's a Black woman. And I get that. No qualms with that. But the idea that like there's only 4 people on that side of the house, right? There's 4, 3, 4. There's 4 people on that side of the house. You don't have that many options. Maybe wait until you see the veto, like, and then you can start talking about this type of stuff and, promising people, etc. Like, once you understand what your nominations are going to be. But like to say all that up front, to take people totally off the table and remove them as options, like, it's just not smart. And then, this whole Joseph going on the block thing, I mean, that is like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I mean, don't put your ally on the block in a position where he could go home. Like, that's just like so dumb. Like, why? And so like, you've got that going on. And then it was like, kind of like they were pushing for that. Even when part of the members of the alliance were like, why are we doing this? It was like, no, this is good. This is good. Trust us. But no one really knows why it was good. Like, it was only maybe good for Joseph because he didn't have to vote out Indy. Like, I mean, other than that, I can't see a reason why they'd want to do this. It's really dumb. The whole, like, we have to hide our alliance still. Like, she's still talking about how she's targeting Monty, et cetera. Like, well, how are you going to explain that when the veto gets used and then you put up Joseph? Like, I just don't understand how, like, any of this plan was supposed to work. It doesn't make any sense. And then the whole Kyle thing, I mean, come on, it's his showmance. He's not going to use the veto. Like, he's not. And I absolutely understand where Kyle's coming from when it's like, we just had sex for the first time and now I'm going to like totally, like, I'm going to backdoor her and put her on the block. I just like that would have just been so bad for him. Like, there's no way he could have done that. And if he did that, I would have thought he would have gotten like a 0 from me because that would be a dumb move. And they get that Kyle's not sharing that fact. So like, it does kind of add an element of like, well, she doesn't know that. But at the same time, like, this is his showmance. Like, it's one thing to ask him to vote her out when she's already on the block, but it's a totally other thing to have him be the cause that why she gets put on the block. Not good. So I just think that all of these moves just like didn't make any sense. And the fact that Kyle told her that Michael and Brittany were telling him something completely different than they were telling her, and then she confronted them about it, and they were kind of all cagey, and she didn't like clock that as like, oh my God, these people have been lying to me. They're telling me something that they're telling him something different. We need to figure this out. And instead, kind of seems like she still trusts them 100%. That makes me concerned as to like her read on people and her judgment. And I know I'm like stacking on here, and I just feel terrible doing it because I didn't want this to be the case. But yeah, I'd have to go down on her rating. I honestly, like, I do think she's still kind of in a decent position moving forward. It sounds to me like even after everything that happened this week, people aren't really targeting her. Even when she was able to kind of explain to Indy and Terrence and stuff about like, oh, well, Kyle did, I wanted to backdoor a big target. This was not what I wanted to happen. Kyle refused. They seem to say to her, I don't know if they actually believe it, but they did seem to say to her, like, it's fine. I don't blame you. I know that this was something else. I know you had a bigger plan or whatever. I don't know if they actually believe that, but the fact that they're telling her that stuff is good. Maybe she's in a decent spot moving forward. And one more thing I want to say, I know I'm just going on and on and on, but there's just so much, is that when she first told Terrence that she was going to put him on the block, she's like, you're going on the block. Why did she say it that way? Why did she say it in that weird, like, sing-songy thing? Like, it was so insulting to him. Like, why did she do, like, so many bad moves this week? I'm so sorry.
It's
but
a
I
one.
think
No.
as moving forward, she could be still in a decent spot, and she doesn't seem to be number one on the target list. I am still going to give her a 5.
Wow, interesting.
Yes, and I will say again, because I do think that people, even though I have the same reasoning every single week, every single time, people seem to always be confused, that I do heavily factor in decisions made in the week. That no, her position is not a 3, but she's getting penalized for what I deem to be errors in judgment. And here's the thing, I don't even really blame her for a lot of those things. We talked about this with Hannah in our interview with her. Like, I do think that she is still sort of suffering from the situation that she found herself in the early portion of the season. And when we talk about like her need for the leftover votes, it's because of this unfair perception that she had to deal with in the start of the season, where half the house was against her. So I don't think it's fair that like she was put in this situation. I think that it's also like not fair that she was given very bad advice on her HOH. But in terms of the decisions made, I am definitely penalizing for those decisions. And she also like had a lot to lose, and I feel like she lost a lot. Like, you know what I mean? Like she came from a much higher position than other players that are already just kind of like circling the drain.
And also, to be fair to her, the Alliance did not help her in any way. Like you were saying, like the Alliance did not help her because she's sitting there like Joseph's feeding her this like plan. She's like, oh, I guess like, is everyone interested in this? Is this a good idea? And everyone's like, yeah, okay, that's interesting. Yeah. And then behind her back, they're like, this is a terrible idea. Why are we even trying to do this? Why is she entertaining this? But it's like, tell her that you're in the alliance with her. Like, why are you guys like saying this stuff behind her back? And same with like Brittany and Michael. Like, why are you guys saying this stuff behind her back and then not like telling her the truth? Like not trying to be like, Taylor, this is a bad idea. You're on our team. We're all in an alliance together. We're working together. Like this is what you should be doing this week. And instead it's like, well, let her, I don't know, let her, walk off the plank herself. Like, it's like, no, like if you're really working together, you should be giving her good advice. So to be fair, some of this is not just her, it's being fed bad information, but obviously we would hope that she would kind of push that away.
All right, Prudham, what are your thoughts?
I was debating, do I just keep going or do I keep it light and then we'll get to Kyle? No, it's fine. I thought it was great. I was expecting a 3 even. I was thinking maybe even a 2 here. Yeah, it's interesting because I have been by far and away, Taylor's been my favorite up until, she still is my favorite. And I still kind of want her to win the next HOH if she could play in it. Rookie mistakes, her first HOH. The circumstances around this have been very unique. Being totally ostracized for 2 weeks, finding power in a 7th out of 7 in an alliance that brought her in last. Living for 3 weeks in a game that wasn't Big Brother. It was a variation of it, finally getting power. Unfortunately, like, I have been struggling between giving her a couple of different numbers. And I've settled on long term. I don't think she's in the worst spot, which is good. Short term, she's also one of the safer people going into this wacky week coming up, which is also good. I don't know long term what her strategy is looking like, and I worry that she's placed her allegiance, her loyalty into players that at the moment could either beat her at the end or cut her before it matters. And I'm not sure right now what I'm seeing is good enough to overcome that, which is worrying. And the closest allies she had, the best weapons she had in her arsenal, have slowly distanced from her in Michael and Brittany up until this point. And they've now become more free agents working in the middle, whereas up to this point they were playing with her as their number 3, and that opens up opportunities where it might close doors in the near future, especially if she gravitates closer to Joseph. And if Joseph continues to play the way he played this week, it could become a massive problem for Taylor, just because she's so close to him by proxy within the structure of the house. A lot of things can change, though. That's the hard part about this week. I feel like I'm just pulling the casino, the slot machine lever, and a number's popping up. Definitely not going to be a 7. I'm going to give her a 4 because the mistakes that she made were worse than I think the average of what it should be. A 5 to me is just playing run-of-the-mill okay. And this is just my personal view on the 1 through 10 scale, but like, I don't feel like it's the worst thing in the world. A 4 is easily recoverable. But at the same time, so many rookie mistakes made in week 6. And I felt like this was a putt-putt she was an inch from the hole in a putt-putt range. All she had to do was tap it in. It really wasn't asking a lot. This weren't asking a lot for a Big Brother week. I thought this was going to be a very easy week. It's turned into, I believe, the most complicated week of this season. And that's largely in part because of her decisions with the direction, what to do, who to nominate, why to nominate them. Promising safety was really rough at the start, going along with Joseph's ridiculous idea of nominating him, which was not even really in her best interest. And then it was just going to spiral from there. The veto with potentially strong-arming Kyle into getting rid of his showmance. On paper seems absurd. It also felt absurd watching it happen. I understand that it's for the betterment of the leftovers, but you also need to be able to read the room and understand that not everyone is actually as committed to the leftovers, and things change. And a lot of the times the best players throughout the history of Big Brother plan for when the winds change. And unfortunately, even though Turner said like the people who turn first tend to get clipped, I don't think I would fully agree with that. A lot of the times it's the opposite. It's the people who turn that don't get clipped. They actually restructure the house. Mm-hmm. And if Taylor is playing like this then as she is now, I don't know if she's going to be in a good spot. And so I think I think she'll probably go up for me based on what happens next week. But right now I'm leaving her at a 4. It's a little red, but not super red. But yeah, she can still win. She can still win the game. It's a little bit tough with some of these jury votes, but we'll see what happens. So.
Yes. All right. Well, the audience is with Melissa on this one. The audience gave Taylor a 5 this week. So there it is. Definitely a drop here for Taylor. I can't get over the fact that she very nearly put Joseph up on the block, and he very well could have gone home on her HOH. Really, really just kind of the luck of the draw that ended up not happening. So let's move on to Kyle. How do we feel about Kyle? Melissa, what are your thoughts on Kyle?
I mean, I don't think Kyle played this week well at all either. I just feel like, and here's the thing is like, I absolutely agreed with him that he should not backdoor Alyssa. Like, I think that would have been really bad for him. Like, she's not just in the show, like, but personally, like, that would be so mean to do the day after, whatever happens. I just feel like the way he's gone about it has not been great. And at the same time, I don't know if I see another way to go about it, because it's like they're coming at him, they're telling him, this is the plan, we're going to do this, and he's pushing back on them, and that's making him look suspicious, because it's like, oh, well, I guess he, I don't know, is working with Alyssa now, and it's like, well, duh, she's his showmance. Like, what do you think is going to happen? But like, I don't really know what else he could have done. At the same time, like, he didn't do a good job, because now his own alliance is kind of like, they see him as more of a liability. They see Alyssa and him as more of a liability. Really just not good for his game this week. And also, like, another thing is that it does seem like the other side of the house is also not pleased with Kyle, because they thought that, and Taylor had been telling them that she was going to backdoor a larger target, not Alyssa. And they're thinking that Kyle went rogue and, ruined the plan. And now they're going to lose either Indy or Terrence, when they could have lost like Monty or Joseph or someone like that. And this is all Kyle's fault, because he freaked out and he thought she was going to nominate Alyssa, even though she never was. And Taylor's really playing that up. So I do think Taylor's doing a good job of that. But the also the fact that, it was then revealed to Taylor that Kyle went to Indy saying that he was worried that Taylor was going to put up Alyssa, and kind of signaling to that side of the house that she was going to make that move. That's not good. And because then Taylor found out about it. So yeah, not great. I think, oof.
It's a 1. No.
It's a 1. No, I think the one thing that he's got going for him is that, like, he was able to keep Alyssa around, which is good for him. Alyssa still has connections to the other side. Like, she could make it so that he doesn't get nominated. And it does seem like he still has decent connections with Turner and Michael and Brittany, and that's good for his game. But I do think that he could be one of the first people targeted from within the leftovers. However, he seems to be thinking that as well, because he's preemptively trying to ensure that they kind of form some potential attack for him. Like, he's talking to Turner about it. He's talking to Brittany and Michael about it, about possibly making the first move, making that attack. So the fact that I guess he's thinking about that is possibly good for him. But at the same time, if word gets out that he's thinking about that, then he's going to be the first one targeted. Okay. I don't think he played this week worse than Taylor, I have to say, because I do think Taylor made some bad moves, but I do think he is kind of in a vulnerable position moving forward. So I think it kind of evens out for me. And I think that brings Kyle to, I think a 5. I think a 5. I don't know.
All right, Peridium, what are your thoughts?
Oh boy. Again, I could spin it in so many directions based on pick a day of the last 5 days, and it's like you're telling me some days it's a 3, it's a 4, it's a 5. Ultimately, I think I'm gonna land on.
It's hard.
I've been fluctuating between a lot of them. Like, almost every single one of my scores right now has been 2 numbers, and I'm like, do I just round up then? Because given benefit of the doubt, why not? It's just a number at the end of the day. Kyle is reaping the fruits of this. He sowed these seeds for weeks, and they're coming back to bite him. And his alliance has the wrong impression of what he wants, and that's not lining up. And they're confused, and they're like, "We thought you were more us than her. You're showing us that's not necessarily the case." On the other hand, it's like they know the circumstances of Kyle's situation with Alyssa. They, I think, understand that, like, there are other options. Alyssa isn't that big of a deal, really, in the scheme of things. Like, she doesn't have a lot going for her. Like, spoilers for my rating, but I'm not that high on her at all. She's not as big of a threat as she's being made out to be. So I almost think that, like, for everyone else's sake, they should have just said, like, whatever, Kyle, and, like, secretly been like, we'll deal with him later. But, like, ultimately, Kyle has kind of been logically standing his ground, but also distancing himself, because he's getting his time sucked up by hanging out with Alyssa so much that he's missing out on these meetings. Many of the time he is out of the loop, and he's getting brought in, and he's like, oh, pity, woe is me. But it's also like, well, you've made this bed or this floaty, and you're literally, like, lying in it. And it's like, Kyle, for weeks you've been talking about how they need to get rid of Alyssa, and now they're ready to get rid of Alyssa, and you're like, no, not happening. And it's like, I see both sides of the argument, which leaves me in a bit of a. I originally was looking down on him and saying his position has gotten worse. He went out. He's potentially going to lose the pound. He's potentially at the bottom of the leftovers, although that's up for debate because Michael and Brittany are also part of the leftovers, and they're kind of like looping him in and wanting to work with him as a temporary sword to use against the other side. I ultimately am thinking that I'm going to. I was thinking of 4, but I think because of his decisions I'm going to leave him at a 5 as well, because it's sort of like they even out on the scale of pros and cons, where if this was earlier last 2 weeks, I've been really frustrated with some of the choices he's been making strategically. And I feel like he has now gotten to the point where he has sort of made his own bed of a difficult path ahead. And that's leaving me at a 5. He's got allies who want to use him and then get rid of him. Don't love that for him. But at the same time, he is one of the only forward-thinking players in the leftovers in the Pound. The Pound is loyal to the Pound. He's in the Pound, but he's not really loyal to them. He's got options. And I think that if anyone's going to disrupt the leftovers in the Pound, it will most likely be him making that first shot, which I don't love. But at the same time, he's now at the bottom. So he's kind of got to do something to shake that up and change the status quo. I ultimately, week 2, I thought Kyle was going to be one of the winners. I had him as my top 4. I don't feel like he's going to win this season at this point, but I'll leave him in the middle and say, we'll see what happens with this twist. He could go down, he could go up. So.
All right. Well, the audience agrees with both of you. The audience also gave Kyle a 5, but I disagree. You guys are being way too lenient on these absurd decisions being made by these players this week. I think that Kyle played terribly this week. He spent the first 3 straight days just laying in bed with Alyssa, doing nothing but eventually sleeping with her in the have-not room, and has completely lost his head in the game. Kyle is the person who came in the best position this week by a mile. And he has just thrown it all in the trash this week by his terrible gameplay, in my opinion. The only reason I'm not giving him a 1 is because he did make the decision to not use the veto, which I think is the correct decision. But I think that he really just completely allowed himself to be just dismantled, and I don't love how he handled the situation with. The way that he explained not using the veto, I think that he completely gave himself away. I think that, again, when I'm watching Kyle and Taylor and Joseph all just like go to war about this situation with the veto, I'm just like, what? You guys are all losing. Like, this is, I said it on an update, this is mutually assured destruction. This is so bad on so many levels. And I'm going to be extra harsh on Kyle because, again, I feel like, unlike Taylor, who was like in a good spot, Kyle, I gave him a 6 last week because I felt like he was making decisions that were hurting his game, but he would have been and should have been an 8 or a 9 based on how just crushing his position was. In the course of 1 week, he managed to damage so many relationships. Not only like he's weirded out Alyssa. I'm not getting to the fact that he hasn't told Alyssa about the leftovers yet, or anything like that. But he damaged his relationship with. He continues to damage his relationship with Brittany and Michael, who are willing to work with him just as a number at this point. He's damaged his relationship irreparably with Taylor and Joseph. The Pound is barely a thing, I think, for him at this point. He cannot go to 7 with the leftovers anymore. That's not an option. He managed to that was Michael's position. Now it's Kyle's position, except I have much less faith in Kyle to be able to get out of that position. He is willing to take a shot first, which is yes, good for him on one hand, but he doesn't actually have any backing for it because Michael and Brittany will turn around and cut him the second he does it. So he barely has any path left for him in the game. He went from the start of this week being in an 8 to 9 position and is ending it in a spot where I don't think he can even win the game at this point unless he gets really lucky. I'm giving Kyle a 2. I think this was a terrible week for Kyle. I think he deserves a terrible rating. Again, it's possible he's able to bounce back from this, but he has a long way to go. And I think the decisions that he made this week were really, really bad. The hammer is coming down.
Well, when you put it that way, it makes me want to go down now. It won't change it, I don't think. Will it change it if I was fluctuating between a 4 and a 5, and I'm like, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll be the nice guy. I really wanted to come in and scorch the earth, but damn, Taran, you have eclipsed all of that feeling from me.
Yes. All right. Well, let's talk about Alyssa then, Peridium. What are your thoughts on Alyssa?
I'm not good on Alyssa. I gave her a 3. Last week you guys had her a 4. I thought that was too generous. She's not doing. And the audiences are. Is that a 7?
Yeah, there seems to be a glitch in the matrix here. She got a 4 from the audience last week.
No way
I don't know why there's a 7.
No, yeah, I see last week someone. Okay, that's a 4.
Is that a 7?
Is that a 7? That's insane. Alyssa is totally on the outs, but I mean, Jesus, if Kyle's a 2, I'd love to see what you have to say about Alyssa. She's got nothing going on. She's not actively destroying her game, but she doesn't really have a game to actively destroy. She's so on the outs. It's like hearing Kyle talk about like where's Alyssa's head at? And he's like, it's so sad. Like she has no idea of what's happening. She thinks this person's there and that person's there. And it's like her reads are barely correct, which makes me want to give her a lower score. But I also feel like I want to reserve the lowest scores for maybe the Kyles of the house or the Indies who are threatening to just quit the whole game, or the Terrences or the Jasmines who are rubbing people the wrong way and also out of the majority alliance and also have no idea what's happening. And like are probably the next person to get evicted in Alyssa's case. She could easily be at the top, or because 2 people are going, and if the leftovers stay together, they're looking at Alyssa going out, probably next to Jasmine or Terrence, some combination of those 3. Possibly a shot gets taken. Maybe that's in like Alyssa is like the MacGuffin that everyone's fighting over to get out or to keep in, but Alyssa herself has no idea to what extent is happening and is breaking up the biggest power of the season. And it just leaves me like, I don't have a ton to say about Alyssa herself because she's not calling any shots. She's hanging out with Kyle. She's more worried about whether she'll be Kyle's girlfriend or not than whether or not she's going to be in a good position to go to the end of the game and win. Whereas Kyle is on the opposite side and is struggling to find a way to win. So I thought I was being harsh with a 3, but yeah, that's where I'm at. I give her a 3.
All right. Well, the audience gave Alyssa a 4 again here. So there you go. For me, I'm also pretty low on Alyssa. Obviously, surviving the week is great. The fact that a shot might be taken soon is good. The fact that the leftovers kind of went to war over her is good. But she also did make some really boneheaded decisions when she took the prize from the HOH. For as much as I said, again, like, if I'm on the show, take my prize all you want. Like you're not getting the veto. Of course, you're gonna take a prize. But you don't do it from the HOH, like in a spot where you don't know how they might react. And I think that was the one point of reasoning that did make some amount of sense that they were talking about when it came to taking out Alyssa. In addition to that, she is still left in the dark by Kyle, and knowing that the twist is coming up, that she's going to probably go into the twist, maybe get separated from Kyle, and have no information about what she should do, is very bad for her. Nobody, and this is one of the most damning things for Alyssa's game. And the thing is, I don't even blame her that much for it, because it's mostly Kyle doing this damage to her. But the amount of damage that Kyle is doing to her like potential jury chances is just astounding. Like Kyle is just trashing her in the house all the time. She is the dumbest player. She's making all kinds of bad moves. She's not, and he's doing it to try to protect her, right? She's not a threat. She's not worth taking out. She can barely win anything. She can barely make any decisions. She's the reason she dismantled this entire alliance. The old school, she dismantled 2 entire alliances, old school and girls. But like all of those things will come back to haunt her if she makes the final 2, because Kyle can't be in the jury like, oh no, actually she played really well. and have any credibility, right? So I feel like she's in such a bad spot. I'm also giving her a 2. Now, the reason why Kyle and Alyssa can both be 2s for me is not that they're in the same position. Kyle is obviously much more poised to win the game than Alyssa, but Kyle came into this week at a way higher rating than Alyssa and trashed way more equity than Alyssa ever had in the game. So when it comes to their decisions this week, like, Kyle made much worse decisions here. So there you go. All right, let's Melissa, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not impressed with Alyssa. I think, yes, she was spared this week because Kyle decided not to use the veto to protect her. However, he has not been telling her anything of his game in the house, and he has not let her in on anything that's going on. So she's totally in the dark. She has no idea what's going on. And like, it's sad because she thinks she has like sway over Kyle because he makes her think that. But, so she'll be talking to Jasmine or whoever, and she'll be like, oh, I will make sure Kyle doesn't target you. But it's like, Kyle would literally not care if you told him don't target Jasmine. Like, he would just do whatever he wants anyway. So I just feel like she's not doing anything in the game. She thinks that she has something going on for her in the game, but she just really doesn't, and is totally oblivious to like the actual goings on of the house. And I think you're right that Kyle has just been, bad mouthing her to the point where people just would not vote for her in the end if she were to get there. And the fact that she was target number 1 this week, I feel like, and the question was, okay, so would you feel more comfortable if you win HOH next week, getting her out then? And so clearly people are thinking like, we need to get Alyssa out now, whether it's this week or next week, which is really not good for her game. And I don't think she would have literally any way of saving herself besides winning the veto. And like, I don't know if I see that happening. So yeah, she gets a 2 from me.
Right. Well, let's move on then to Michael. Let's see. I can tell you that the audience gave Michael a 7 this week. A 7 for Michael. Which is interesting to me again, because last week he got an 8. And he is now getting a full point lower from the audience than he did last week, which is interesting to me because from my perspective, Michael is in a much better position than he was in last week. And even though I do think that the way that the move was handled this week could have been a lot cleaner, it was a move that he made to intentionally get both sides really fighting each other here between Joseph and Kyle, and it worked. I mean, he like I don't think it should surprise anybody that this is the thing I've been saying Michael needs to do for weeks now, and he actively went and did it, and it worked. And I think he's now in a much better position. He's essentially put Kyle in his position of like the worst position in the leftovers, where if Kyle goes to 7, there's a decent chance that Kyle is the first to go. And also, to a degree, Taylor now, because now Turner, instead of targeting Michael, is looking at Michael or Taylor. And now Monty, instead of just looking at Michael, may also look at Kyle because of how frustrated he is and how close he is with Joseph and the conversations they've had about how Kyle's decision-making is affecting the pound. He's also learned about the pound in this week. He has really riled Kyle up to be ready to take a shot. And then Michael will be able to back off and kind of be like, whoa, and sort of like retaliate with the rest of the house. Will that succeed? I don't know, but it's definitely a better position than he was in before. So I feel very good about how Michael played this week. I know that this is definitely not in line with how I think some other people are seeing it. And I think that the only thing stopping me from going too much higher in the ratings this week is that there is still this situation going on with the split house. And I don't really know how that's going to impact him. I do think that he is one of the safer players, especially because of his competition ability. But I think the thing that's really holding me back when it comes to Michael, because I do really like the move that he made this week, is that it wasn't the cleanest. And as things get trickier and trickier, I don't know that he'll be able to continue to pull it off. But it's still a better position than he was in before, because he now has at least a little bit more of a buffer, and we have seen him continually get out of these positions in these situations. So for me, I am going to give Michael an 8. I feel very good about Michael's game this week. Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little torn on this one, because I think that the fact that he now knows about the pound, I think is really good for him, because that's really important information to have. So that's great for him. I do think that the way, and I know you're saying that the way that they played this week was really good, but I do feel like the way Michael and Brittany played this week was like too obvious, although they didn't really get caught, because Taylor didn't really notice that it was so obvious, and Kyle didn't really notice that it was so obvious, because I thought that, the fact that Kyle told Taylor that, they were telling him something different, and Taylor recognizing that would mean that, and telling Kyle, well, they're saying something different to me. I thought for both of them, they'd be like, okay, like now we're connecting the dots. Michael and Brittany are playing us, or they're pitting us against each other. And instead it's like, oh, now Kyle goes and talks to Michael about how he really wants to work with him, and now he like is going to tell him about the pound. Like, and then Taylor's like totally believing Brittany and Michael. So, I mean, I don't know. All logic's kind of out the window for this one, but I do feel like it was a little messy, and it could possibly be like something that could come up in the future for him. So the way that this was played was, I think, a bit messy. Could have been done a little better, but he wasn't in any danger. Now you've kind of got the two sides of the leftovers kind of going against each other. So I think overall, like, it kind of evens itself out. It's pretty good. So I'm going to give him a 7.
All right, Peridium.
Oh, wow. I was fluctuating between a 7 and an 8. This will determine his rating, won't it? If I give him an 8, yeah, it'll put him at an 8. I'm so of two minds with Michael, and to a lesser extent also Brittany, who's coming up. It's almost one and the same a little bit, because both of you guys I agree with both your takes as far as the pros and the cons. Like, I did think it worked out tremendously well at this point in the week for Michael to come in and find a way to fracture the 7 alliance. And he didn't necessarily do it all, but he's done a lot to contribute between playing the sides, pushing them. He tells people what they want to hear, and then that he hypes them up, and then they accidentally are butting into each other, and they're having two different stories, but he's not getting caught. Yeah. Really, they're giving him the benefit of the doubt. They're showing him grace when they really shouldn't. They should be questioning what's going on and why are these stories not lining up. And he's been able to, not always the best, but it seems to be doing just good enough, which, hey, if it's good enough, then it works. That's, at the end of the day, it's what's going to matter. Although to an extent, maybe not, because it's sloppy. It's a little sloppy, and now I felt like initially he was like, we have to get Alyssa out, then it flips. Now we have to keep Alyssa. And I was like, is this intentional, or was this just by circumstance? Did he fall into this position that he's kind of wanted, but did he make it happen? Or is it a lot of things out of his control? Because if it's more in his control, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, put him at an 8. If I feel like he's just in a better position, knowing about the pound is so huge. That was one of the biggest weaknesses. I felt like it made sense, but he didn't know. But now he knows, and that's so much information. There are so many factions that have formed that aren't pronounced yet, but they might be coming up with this twist. And I feel like Michael is in one of the best spots to work with any of them, to assimilate with any group. And that's a very powerful place to be in the game of Big Brother, especially when you're at this point where the jury's forming. He's won 5 competitions. He's got 4 vetoes, and like, that's not even talked about really. And that was talked about before, but now there's so much other stuff happening. And a large part of it is due to him, his own actions, that sort of, he's not really at the forefront, and he should be. And he's probably the best player in this cast. And it's nice because I feel like he's very self-aware, and he knows his position. And I don't think that a lot of the other players that we were talking about know exactly where they fall. Some of the players have no clue where they fall. They don't even know what house they're in sometimes. Yeah, so a part of me is like, I want to have complete, because last week I was following along and I think I had exactly the same ratings as you guys did. I was like, they're going to give him a 7. It was a 7. They're going to give him a 2. It's a 2. And the whole week I was like, up until I think the last, I think it was Kyle. And so I'm stuck here. I'm like, I haven't matched up with Taran once. Do I keep the streak going? Because last week it was literally, I was talking to my wife and I'm like, because we watch and she might be watching now. I'm like, every single player was like, they're gonna give him that, give him that, give him this, give him this. I'm gonna give him an 8.
There you
And
go.
I was fluctuating between the 7 and the 8. I really think that I feel good about his winner potential. I feel good about his future.
Wow,
It's just
sucking
it
up
was
to
a
Taran, trying to
Yeah,
get
well,
the same ratings
I-
as Taran. I see what's
I-
going on here. Too afraid
gave-
to stand up to Taran.
we're
Big,
both
scary
on the same
Taran.
page with Kyle. We're on the same page with Kyle.
All right, well, let's move on then to Brittany. I gave Brittany a 7 last week. I was the highest on Brittany, and I still feel very good about Brittany. In fact, I would honestly consider going up to an 8 for Brittany, if not for this split house twist, which I think is not the best for her. Not that she's in danger, but just like in terms of controlling the fallout of what's going to happen next. I think that the biggest key for Brittany this week has been the decision that she made with Michael to try and bring Terrence to the final 3. And the fact that the leftovers are about to probably split before Terrence leaves, which is so good because even if she doesn't get to final 3 with Terrence, with Michael, if she's in any final 3 with Terrence, she's basically at a 50% chance or more to win the game, right? Because as they pointed out, Terrence is not winning part 1 or part 2. And then Brittany is one of the few people that like really studies hard, could absolutely win part 3, take Terrence and win the game. And the fact that Terrence might be in the house when the leftovers go to war and therefore just kind of like slide really far down toward the end. And Brittany also should not be a primary target with the leftover war. She could also be somebody that slides to the end, especially if Jasmine does leave and Terrence is the only goat really left in the house. That puts her in a really good place, even if her plans don't succeed. A fallback is just that she could just end up there with Terrence in the final 3 and have a really good chance to win the game. So I really like that for her. I also like what she did this week. Even more so than Michael in terms of coming away clean. She was the one to bring up Alyssa as a target and then fully went back on it and is completely playing both sides here. So I really like all of those things. Again, I would give her an 8, I think, this week, if not for the fact that this split house means that there's a very good chance Terrence ends up leaving in this split house because they can't control which side will target which person. And I think Terrence is just a very easy person to end up leaving. And if Terrence does leave, then she's kind of back in that spot where, now Michael's here, Kyle, Joseph, Monty, like there are so many people around me that I can't really beat in the final 2. And that's not great. But she still, I think, plans to go far with Taylor if she can. And I do think that she has her chances against Taylor in the final 2 have gone up over the course of this week. So that's still pretty good. And I still really like what she did this week. So overall, I'm giving her a 7. This is a tentative for now. I do think it could go up depending on what happens in this split week. Melissa, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel similarly with Brittany as I do with Michael in that it was a little bit messy, but I think the fact that it seems like nobody really caught on to it is good. And also, I think the fact that the two of them can bounce these ideas off each other and kind of like, it seems to me like at this point, they're like the most strategic, best players and like in terms of the way that they're talking about the game, not necessarily their positioning, but the way that they're talking about the game together. I think that's so good for them and so helpful. So I am impressed with that. I think I don't feel like people are really targeting her that much moving forward. It's possible that with the split house, things kind of go crazy. But at this point, it doesn't feel to me like she's in that much danger, just because there are so many bigger threats out there, or outsiders that can be taken care of before Brittany. So at this point, I'm going to give her a 7.
All right, Peridium.
I'm going to give her an 8. I'm going to go along with Michael. Mostly because she's in lockstep with him. For the most part, I mean, yeah, there are small conversations that she has on her own. She has a pretty good relationship with the women. She might be the last woman standing, or at the very least be with Taylor, which also I agree with you. I think that she could beat Taylor in a final 2. I think it could go either way. It might be pretty. I'd love to see that matchup. She's very self-aware, and she's been rising in the ranks week after week. Her power level is growing as the people leave, and she gets a little bit more autonomy and agency in what she gets to do and who she gets to do it with. I've been loving the options that she's opened up for herself, and she's not a threat, and she's not a threat now, but that doesn't mean that she can't turn on the boosters later. And she's showing me that, like, if she could drop, I do hope that she can get a little more confidence in herself by the end to really clinch it, because I do think that she could go far. I could see her in the final 4 at the very least. Hopefully she could win comps. Big Brother does tend to trend toward more physical players winning, and if this end game shakes up, she might be in a bad spot. She might be like the Nicole Anthony of the group, where she's just not likely to win these competitions, but she does have a lot of understanding of the mental trivia that's necessary to win. Ultimately, a little sloppy this week. Same thing goes for Michael. They are in a good position now, and I think that with the frustrations within the leftovers, they've been given so much grace, Michael and Brittany, that to me, they're basically in the same spot. Almost, if anything, Brittany will outlast Michael, I feel. Yeah, don't have too much else to say. I've already covered it with Michael, so leave her at an 8.
Yes, I did see some people in the chat saying, like, doesn't the twist affect Michael as well? In my opinion, no, not in the same way, because Michael doesn't have, in my view at least, Michael doesn't have the same restrictions that Brittany does when it comes to sitting in the final 2. He can sit next to, I think, almost anybody and win the game. And his ability to win competitions, especially endgame competitions, I think is still considerably higher than Brittany. So if Terrence leaves in the split house, that's pretty devastating for Brittany, at least in the short term. It doesn't really even touch Michael all that much. So that's sort of why I see it that way. But I am still, honestly, I expected to be very high on Brittany. The audience gave Brittany a 6. The audience gave Brittany a 6. So the audience not really feeling it like we are with Brittany. So let's move on then to Joseph. Melissa, how do you feel about Joseph?
Not great, to be honest. The fact that he was volunteering and really pushing for himself to go on the block is just so bad. So bad. I don't know why he did that. I really thought he was one of our strongest players in the house last week, the week before, etc. But that's just such a bad move. And I get that, like, to save face with not having to vote out Indy or whatever and trying to get jury votes, but like those jury votes don't matter if you don't get to the end. So the fact that he almost went on the block, and people in his alliance were already talking about, like, hey, if Joseph's on the block, like, maybe, like, that's really not good. And the only reason he didn't get nominated is because, like, they got chained together by some, like, random veto thing. Like, I just feel like it wasn't like he turned around and was like, actually, don't do this. It's a bad idea. He would have gone along with it. He was pushing for it. It was just so bad. Just such a bad move. I think because this is hard, because I feel like if it actually had occurred and he had gone on the block, I would be like rating it so low. But the fact that it didn't actually happen, like, helps his rating a bit, just because, like, we don't have to deal with that. But I think, like, moving forward, people are probably going to be questioning him more. I think the other side of the house also isn't as keen on Joseph anymore as they were before, which isn't good. But I think, like, he still does have some allies within the house. So I don't know if he's necessarily, like, the biggest target out there. So I think I'm gonna give him a 5.
A 5. Peridium, what do you think?
Yeah, this was a week of Joseph just digging himself into a hole with his gameplay. I felt like every day up until the veto ceremony. It's cooled off now, but this was a week of showing me cracks in Joseph's gameplay and his decision making on a small scale basis. That really the stakes were so low, and it's erupted into such a volatile spot going into what could be his demise coming up, possibly if the wrong people win power. A couple of things like him overplaying, getting too comfortable. It's like poaching himself. It's week 6. This is weird. Like, you don't need to do that. It's overplaying the game. This is a very simple week. It's similar sentiments to Taylor, although in this case, I feel like Joseph was the mind of what was happening, and he was constantly convincing Taylor to go in these directions. For his game, fair play, it would have possibly been working out for him, but it didn't happen. And the idea on paper, if he had just like read it out loud, it would have sounded like, yeah, this is actually a really bad idea, but nobody was telling him not to do it for the most part. And he just really was, he gets tunnel vision so easily, and he gets so stuck on one idea that he wants to see happen, and he's just going to keep going. He doesn't stop. He just is relentless. He doesn't stop, and he has to stop sometimes. You got to put your foot on the brake. I've been watching these feeds since BB12, and I can tell you, like, the best players know when to pump the brakes. It's not fun, and you don't always get what you want. And in some cases, I feel like they shouldn't. But in Joseph's case, the stakes were so low that the only thing you could do at that point is overplay yourself out of the game by next week, and that very well could happen. But I've been so nice to these people with my ratings that are like, there's the potential that this works out with the split. There's a potential because he still has numbers with Turner and with Monty. He's got Taylor-ish, and he's technically could have Michael and Brittany because they're sort of in the middle and they're willing to go with the wind, but also they would probably prefer he go out and then Kyle go out. So he's probably at the top of their pecking order, which isn't great for him. But damn, like, I've been fluctuating again between these low numbers. I'm going to probably go with a 4, but I easily could see him being a 2 or 3.
All right.
But I feel like his long term is like keeping me from going too low, because I can see this breaking out and falling into his lap, and he can win competitions. I think he can. He hasn't really won too many yet. So I'm willing to give him benefit of the doubt, but like, I would not look at this week as a good week to take examples from for how to play Big Brother, especially when it's it's served up on a silver platter. This is the opposite of like the gameplay you should be playing. If Joseph was not as good of a player as he's been, I would go even lower, because he's very much hurt his game. But I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, sort of like I've done with Taylor. I'm going to go with a 4. So,
Well, the audience disagrees with both of you. The audience is even higher on Joseph. They gave him a 6 this week. A 6 this week. And I have to disagree.
Well, I do too.
I mean, look.
People.
I really enjoy Joseph. I really do. But the guy volunteered for the block this week for no reason. No reason. There was no reason to do it. And there is absolutely, again, a window to get Alyssa out of the game this week, which would have been so good for Joseph, and he wouldn't have even had to have any fingerprints on it. If that plan had just come into place before the veto, while he was busy volunteering for the block for no reason. And the only reason this isn't even a lower rating is because he didn't go through with it. But that doesn't really matter that much. I mean, that just would have been even worse because he might have been voted out. Yes, but the fact that he did it at all didn't give him anything. It hurt him in so many different ways. I think that, not only did it sort of like put him in a position where he was then not able to get Alyssa out, then he pushes Alyssa way too hard with Kyle, even though Kyle is clearly not going to use the veto to send Alyssa out at that point. And he has put himself in this deadlock. Kyle is just dead set against Joseph at this point. Kyle wants him gone, and Kyle is willing and ready to take the shot far before Joseph seems to be willing to do so. Now, I do think that the twist might help Joseph because it might force him to take a shot that he may otherwise not have taken. But he also may still feel comfortable enough to feel like, I don't need to win this one. Like, hey, you know, Jasmine and Terrence are in my group with Kyle. Like, why don't I just let Kyle win and take that shot at Jasmine and Terrence for me, so I don't have to, and I can maintain my cover or whatever. Like, I unfortunately can see that being something that Joseph would do because he's the guy that volunteered for the block for no reason this week. And if he had gone on that block, I think there's a very good chance he goes home. I really do. So I really dislike all of that. That said, he is still somebody that his social game has just been blossoming over the course of the season. He's somebody that really struggled to make strategic connections in the early portion of the season. But as he has developed in the game, he's really connected with people. And it's what is, frightening Kyle about Joseph is how good he is at connecting with people. And again, I think that this twist helps him in a few different ways, depending on how these groups pan out. And there's a decent chance because of this twist that he ends up cruising through this double eviction essentially and lands at the final 8, at which point I think Kyle's advantage dissipates. Kyle no longer will have the head start at final 8 that he does at final 10. So all he needs to do is survive this split situation without losing any of his core numbers. And I think there's a very real possibility that happens. So even though I really, really hate the decision to volunteer for the block, I'm not going to go as low as somebody like Kyle. I also think he had less, space to fall than Kyle did in terms of what his position was before. Again, Kyle was just cruising to a win last week, and Joseph still had work to do. So I'm going to give Joseph a 3 here as well. That's how I feel about Joseph.
I feel like that's so indicative. A 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, what's happening?
Yeah. Oh god.
What a week.
Yeah.
What a week.
Last week was so consistent across the board. It's like everyone's 7s or 2s. And this week it's
It's not good.
Oh boy. And also I saw something that just to be clear, I still think that Taylor beats Brittany in a final 2 scenario. I just think that this week has helped Brittany close that gap a little more, and there's still a long way to go in the season. I still feel like Taylor definitely has a major edge over Brittany, which is why Terrence leaving in the split house would be pretty devastating for her. So let's talk about Turner. Let's see here. Peridium, what are your thoughts on Turner?
You know, Turner's my favorite to watch on the feeds, but there's not too much game-wise compared to literally everyone else we've just been talking about. He's chilling in the pound, but he's also a little bit oblivious to some of the workings that are happening around him with the pound. Michael knows about it. I don't know if Brittany knows. Does Brittany know about the pound or the foursome, that the 4 guys? Does she?
Yeah, they don't know what it's called, and they haven't really focused a lot on it. I think partly because Kyle saying oh yeah, the first 4 that made the alliance are together. That's okay, great, but you're not with them, so it's maybe not that. I mean, not that threatening, especially if you take a shot, that's going to break them up. So they haven't really commented too much on it, but they have both been told pretty explicitly that those 4 have a thing.
Yeah. And so Turner is loyal to currently a fault, but I do think that he's also, he feels like a player who would be open to adjusting as the wind blows. I also feel like he's so laid back right now and just in general that I don't know if he's going to take it as harshly. He's not going to be targeted when the leftovers get taken, start shooting at each other. I feel like he might be the safest person going into this following wild twist. Could go, wouldn't bet on it. This week, he's kind of just chilling. He's creating he's almost like the Sandra to the Russell of the house, with everyone bagging on Jasmine. And then he is the main instigator that gets everyone on his side. And they're cheering for him to go sabotage her time. And we'll see what happens with this birthday party tonight. On some hand, though, it's creating a little bit of enemies when it's such an easy week that he doesn't have to. but he's having fun. He seems to be in a good spot. I think people have been underestimating him, and Michael and Brittany do think that he might become a big threat with the competitions down the line. But I feel like his threat level is much lower than so many other people that he probably isn't going to get taken at a shot at anytime soon. And unfortunately, I'm also like, he's not doing much though. He's not super active beyond, he's got good relationships. He could win a jury vote possibly. I think he could probably work into a majority when the House restructures after the leftovers probably turn on each other before the final 7. He'll probably fall on the right side of the numbers just by virtue of having so many relationships with so many people. Because his game isn't really, he's the one who's, I feel like the waves of this week have affected him maybe the least. I'm just gonna give him a 7.
A 7 from Peridium. The audience, a little bit higher on Turner. The audience gave Turner an 8. But I'm gonna have to disagree with the audience again, and agree with Peridium on this one. I've seen a lot of people talk about how Turner seems to be the person who has just been chilling through this week. But for me, that's, again, part of the problem. I think that Turner's position has deteriorated this week somewhat significantly. He was in a much better position last week, where, the leftovers were primed to get at least a little further, if not 7, at least close to it. And once they do get there to 7, Turner was in a position where he was in the middle and, aligned with Kyle in a final 2. And he benefited a lot from Kyle's positioning within the leftovers being Kyle's final 2. Kyle dropping means that Turner's position has also dropped because Turner is loyal to Kyle and will rise and fall with Kyle unless he abandons Kyle. And if he does abandon Kyle, he no longer has that position, right? So a civil war within the leftovers does not benefit Turner in any way. And it will force him to play more actively, which we haven't really seen him do much of. And so I'm definitely concerned for where this leaves him, especially now that Taylor is talking about how she doesn't feel that tight with Turner. And Turner's kind of one of the people that she would be looking at in a situation where she's taking down the leftovers. And Turner's kind of looking at Taylor. And that's not a good place for him to be. And so, I am giving him the 7 still. I think he's still in a position that he shouldn't be in any major danger soon, and he hasn't made any massive mistakes. But I do think his position has fallen this week. And I think that he is less likely to win the game this week than he was last week. And that was exactly my issue with his game last week, is that I felt like something like this could happen and he wouldn't be doing enough about it to prevent it from happening. And I'm worried that will continue to happen as the season progresses. So it's a 7 from me. I think a lot of people are investing in Turner here, and they're looking for Melissa to help save them. So Melissa, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I see the asks for me to give him a 10, but yeah, I'm not going to do that. Sorry. No, but I am going to say that I think Turner's in a good position. I think that maybe he hasn't done much work this week to improve that position. However, he hasn't really needed to, because everyone around him is kind of imploding and doing all this crazy stuff. I think that Turner's doing a good job of maintaining his position, I think. And I think that he's not on anybody's hit list at this point. Maybe eventually, but at this point, there's so many targets up ahead of Turner that I don't really see Turner being the next person to go. And I think it's possible that this split house thing might actually help him. So I feel pretty good about what Turner's been doing and what his position in the house looks like moving forward. And I think he didn't involve himself really in all the drama of this week, which I think helped him a lot. So yeah, for me, I think he gets an 8. I think he stays an 8. His position feels the same to me. Feel good about him. So yeah, 8.
All right. Well then, let's move on to Jasmine. Let's talk about Jasmine. I can tell you that the audience gave Jasmine a 3 this week. A 3 for Jasmine. I think that's too high for Jasmine, who I think has a very, very hard time surviving this split house situation. And even if she does, the There's almost zero intention to keep her around from almost anybody in the house. Nobody even wants to drag her to the end at this point. The only people that would even be looking at that would be Michael and Brittany, and they want her out ASAP. It's not looking great for Jasmine. She continues to not play very well. She was bad mouthing the HOH during this HOH's reign. It's just terrible. And here's the thing. I think the thing that really solidified this week for me is that they all hate her. She's not going to win this game. I'm so close to giving her a 1 because I really don't think that she can turn it around. But it's just, it feels too premature to do it for me. There's still so much time left in the game. I really want to. I don't know that she did enough this week to drop her down, but man, I do think that if it's not a 1, it's very close. I'm gonna give her a 2. Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree with that. I have to say that I don't think Jasmine is a bad player. I think if she had better allies, I think she could have actually done something in the game. I think that she has quite an impressive ability to be really fake. And I think that like sometimes when I'm watching her talk to people with her fake persona, like I believe her sometimes. And I'm like, why did I ever think Jasmine was like bad? Like, I think she's like nice. And she's like, I believe what she's saying about this. And then the second she's done with that conversation, she goes to someone else and is like, oh my God, I hate Taylor so much, or I hate this or that. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, that whole thing was fake. But I think if I was in the moment talking with her, it would be hard for me to know whether or not she was being fake. Now, the fact is she's kind of being found out that she's being fake by people reporting back to other people saying like, oh yeah, no, she said XYZ. Like, and so I think like that's not great for her. And the fact that she really doesn't have that many allies left and they're kind of going one by one, and the allies that she does have left, not so great for her. I think if Amira was still in the house, I think she'd have a much better shot. But the fact is she's got Indy, she's got Terrence, she's got Alyssa. She doesn't really have anyone. So yeah, she's a 2 for me. Also, she doesn't have the birthday excuse next week, so she can't use that.
She gets a 2 for her birthday. Prudium, what do you think?
Yeah, so I guess I get to decide whether she's going to be a 2 or 3. I mean, spoilers, I'm not high on Jasmine and Shim. I think she's the lowest person I'm on this week, except for the person who's probably getting evicted. She's got the she's got the reputation of like the Russell Hantz of the season, where nobody cares for her, everybody wants her gone. Unlike him, she's got no allies. She's out of the loop. Not going well. People don't talk nicely about her, and they have lots of good reasons, and we have lots of good clips to back up those reasons, to justify it. She's not going to win a jury vote, even if she gets there, which she won't. I have her at a 2 because she's not going home.
All right. There you go. Let's then talk about Monty. How do we feel about Monty? I can tell you that, let me see. Who are we starting with Monty? Is it me? We're starting with me. How do I feel about Monty? I'm actually, I'm feeling not bad about Monty this week. I do think he's in some danger in this split house situation. But in particular, the biggest issue is that Michael and Brittany are kind of looking at Monty. But they don't want to take the shot yet, and they also don't want to be the first people to take the shot, which means that I do think there's a decent chance he survives the split house situation. And I think the fact that Joseph has risen in the target list for the people willing to take a shot, aka Kyle, is very good. I think that there's a good chance that Monty can survive, and then I think he played this week pretty well. I mean, I think that Taylor is talking this morning about how she feels least close to Monty in the alliance, but she does kind of want to change that if she can. He backed the move to get Alyssa out this week, which would have been good for Monty's game had it landed. But he also didn't push when he shouldn't have, like Taylor and Joseph did. He stopped when he needed to stop, and he is like Michael and Brittany, fostering this feud between the two sides, which does also benefit Monty, who was in some trouble before then. So I like what he's doing there. He is still good with pretty much everyone in the pound. Kyle's not looking to take the shot at Monty. He's looking to take the shot at Joseph. And now if he misses Joseph, he might hit Monty, but he honestly might hit Taylor first. And that's good for Monty. I also think that Monty may stand to pick Turner up if Kyle does take a shot and goes, whoa, Turner's like, whoa, I don't like that from Kyle. Monty, what are you up to? I actually feel like Monty may benefit a lot from all of this stuff going on. And I think that this week was good for him. And so I'm going to move up from my 6 to a 7 for Monty. Melissa, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think Monty played this week pretty well. I mean, he played this week well by not really playing that much. I think he kind of laid low, which I think was really good for him. He didn't really get caught up in like the drama of everything. When people would ask him his opinion on it, he'd be kind of like, hey, as long as it's an outsider, like, I don't really care either way. So, and I feel like that's the move. Like that's what everyone should have been saying this week, but obviously they didn't. So I think Monty played the week well. I think also, when he was asked, I guess when he was supposed to be playing up that he might get backdoored and he was asked, like, oh, well, what do you think's happening this week? He would say, to the other side, I haven't really talked game to anyone. I don't really talk game to anyone anymore. And like kind of played it really well. I don't know if it's totally believable, but at the same time, I think he did the best that he could. So yeah, I feel like it's possible that he could be in danger moving into this split week, depending on whatever happens. But I feel like we could say that for everybody. And I think that what you're saying about, Michael and Brittany, like talking about taking the shot, but like not wanting to be the first one to take the shot. Like, I think a lot of people are going to have that feeling about Monty. Like, I don't want to be the one to kind of like put myself out there for that when there are still other people who we could take a shot at. I think that he's in a decent spot moving forward. So I am going to give him a 7 as well.
All right, Purdue. Yeah.
So for Monty, he kind of has a similar vibe to Turner. He didn't overplay this week at all. He didn't have to. It was a very easy week. And thankfully, he stayed out of the mess for most of it. He did have some opinions and stances on where he wanted to go, but he didn't push. He didn't need to. He shouldn't have, and I'm glad that he didn't. I've always been pretty high on Monty. I've always liked him after starting with week 3 onward. And I feel like he is now in the best position, probably even higher than Turner, of the pound to potentially be the winner if that ultimately prevails. I think he'll be able to win these competitions when we get down to the nitty-gritty. I feel like the way that he goes home is going to be, like you said, Taran, they take a shot at Joseph, they miss. Probably ricochets, hits Monty, Monty's out. But he's got a pretty decent relationship with so many people in the house. Like you said, Taylor wants to get closer. It just feels like they're distant. I do worry that he's become a bit of a fake target for the outsiders in the event that one of them somehow gets power, especially going into the split whatever house. Monty's been positioned as a fake target. He was supposed to be the guy going up. Not really, but that's what they think. If they still think that he should be the one going, it's possible that manifests itself into being the reality for a moment because they have no options. But then again, maybe the pound saves him if he's up on the block next to Taylor or Brittany or Joseph, or not Joseph, or maybe even Joseph. I mean, depending on what's happening. Ultimately, I'm going to give him a 7. And I feel like he's just in a similar spot with Turner in that he's flexible. He could win these comps as they get down to it. His threat level isn't as high as others. He didn't play as poorly this week as others. He played it pretty much as it should have been played. He had some opinions. He wanted to go a certain way, didn't go that way. Okay. I mean, he's not fully in the know, and there are people positioning to potentially take him out down the line. But I feel like if any bullets start flying, he's not one of the people that's going to get hit by it.
All right. Well, the audience, again, I don't think the audience has really been on the same page as us for most of the night here. They are lower on Monty than we are. They gave Monty a 6 this week. Not really feeling Monty quite as
Monty and Joseph
much
on the same score. That's an interesting take.
It's been quite the round table tonight.
Yeah.
It's quite the round
Everyone's all
table.
over the place.
This
yeah.
is pulling the slot on the yeah. This is the numbers are all over the place.
All right, let's move on then to Terrence. Melissa, how do you feel about Terrence?
I don't feel good about Terrence. I think like this week though, I could see either one of them going home depending on what the leftovers decide is going to happen. So at this point, like I don't see him winning. I don't see him, I mean, at the same time, I could see a situation where he's kind of dragged further and then maybe something changes and maybe he's picked up as a piece to help, when the leftovers kind of turn on each other, like maybe. So I'm not going to give him a 1 just because like I could see some upward trajectory for him maybe moving forward. So I'm going to give him a 2.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I don't feel great about Terrence. Unfortunately, you got the Alyssas, the Jasmines, the Terrences, the Indies, the outsiders. They're just they all encapsulate the same feeling of like hopelessness in me. In that I just don't know what they're gonna need to do in any of their cases to either not get evicted coming up or to find a way out of it, so that they can be in a position to even win, let alone go deeper into the game. Terrence is on the outs and he's not privy to what's really going on. He's just sort of there putting on tattoos every couple hours, and he's not going home at the moment, which is great. And he may be poised to go deep into the game if some people have their way and drag him there, but he's kind of the GOAT at the moment. He doesn't have the greatest reputation. Yeah, he's getting a 2 from me just because he's not going home, but he's not really doing anything to help himself.
Yeah, Terrence did get a 2 from the audience, so they are with you on that one. I also will give Terrence a 2. He's another one. I'm close to the 1 here. I'm so close to the 1. Just honestly, once we get past this split house week, if things haven't dramatically improved for Jasmine, Terrence, assuming they're even still there, I'm probably going to start dropping them down to the 1s until they eventually leave. But yeah, for now, it is going to be the 2. And I think, Melissa, you also gave Terrence a 2 here. So let's finally move on to Indy. Peridium, how do you feel about Indy?
Yeah, this is where I was debating. Do I be nice? Do I be nice to this woman who wants to quit jury potentially? That's her campaign pitch to stay in the game, I guess, or it's just how she feels. She's currently poised to get voted out. I don't think that's going to change too much. In spite of the first 5 days of this week, I don't think these last 2 are going to fluctuate too much. But Indy's got not much going for her. I mean, it's the same swirl of the outsiders, just sort of stuck on the outs. They don't know what's happening. Indy hardly understands the game itself. She makes strange emotional pitches of basically trying to guilt trip people, or I don't know, like I wouldn't do this if I had the power. It's like, well, that's fine, Indy, but that doesn't matter at the end of the day. She's such an afterthought at this point. She may as well be out of the house. I have her as a 1.
Yeah, the audience did give her a 2. But I do feel like the 1 is warranted here. She's done next to nothing to campaign for herself. She is talking about quitting jury. This is really just like a culmination of how she's played the whole time. She ends up leaving by Taylor's hand when she had no reason to be an enemy of Taylor's. There's no reason that this needed to happen in any way. So it was really just the unnecessary behavior she had toward Taylor that put her in this position in the first place. And so, yeah, it's just going to be a 1 for me. Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, 1 for me as well. I don't see her winning, even if she survives this week. The fact that she's talking about quitting is not good. And I just really haven't seen her play the entire time. So, yeah, it's a 1.
It's a 1.
All right. It's a 1. There you go. That's the stock watch for the week. That's what we have. What a contentious week. I want to remind people again that, first of all, these ratings are not to do with the likelihood of the person winning. If you're like, how could this person have this rating when they have this chance of winning, then you are not listening to what we are saying. That is not the only factor here, but definitely a week, and I understand if you disagree with the ratings. Hopefully, though, you can respect where we are coming from with them, and I do think that a lot of these ratings will bounce back, at least for me. Just a lot of the decisions made this week I thought were very poor, and I felt like my ratings needed to reflect those decisions. But here we are with the stock watch. Let's see. Let me take a look. Do we have any updated leaderboard situations? Probably going to be a little bit of a. Oh, here we go. Nope. I think it's still the same. Okay, so let's just move on to final thoughts for now. Do we have any final thoughts on the week so far here, Melissa?
This has been an interesting week for sure. I don't think it has been the best week for gameplay. I mean, I think that this should have been a really easy week. I guess it's good for the viewers that it wasn't an easy week, but for the people playing in the house, this wasn't really a good showing for most of them. So I don't really know. I'm very interested to see what happens with this twist. I really don't know how they're going to have the house not living together. It seems odd. And I really hope we get some interesting groupings instead of just, like leftovers or whatever versus leftovers with one outsider or whatever, and then they just take them out. That would be very boring. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, I honestly, I'm very glad with the way the week ended up turning out with Terrence and Indy on the block, because I would have been just not thrilled at the idea of Joseph getting backdoored and his alliance voting him out. As exciting as it may be, I would much prefer to have Indy or Terrence leave, just because they're not really doing much for me in the house. So I'm okay with them leaving. Yeah, so those are my thoughts.
All right, Purdy, any final thoughts on the week?
Yeah, bad gameplay makes it for fun viewing. I was expecting this to be a snoozer of a week for the most part. I was happy Taylor won, but at the same time, I have been very entertained. I'm constantly reminded, people are crazy sometimes. It's just wild. What happens when you put these 11 strangers in a house together and you give them a little bit of power, and then it's like everything is just, there's so much, and I don't even know how to encapsulate it all, but it keeps me invested in the game and in the show. Seeing new opportunities arise. I do hope on a more detail-oriented level, I do hope that Joseph becomes more aware of Kyle wanting to take a shot and becomes more of a fight between people who are aware of what's happening. I'm interested to see the fallout of what's happening with this twist. I'm tentatively excited for what we're about to get in 2 days, but I'm also hesitant because knowing Big Brother's track record, it could fall flat on its face. Ultimately, though, this has been a really interesting season. I've really enjoyed it a lot more than I anticipated, especially after the first 2 weeks, where I remember Aman saying, why am I even watching this show sometimes? And now I'm like, this is why. There's really complicated, fascinating, both strategy and emotions coming into play. Lots of overlapping priorities and directions all these people want to go in, and they're all ultimately just trying to win a bunch of money. At the end of the day, it's just a reality show. People are trying to win a bunch of money, and it just feels like sometimes it feels like the world is crashing down, and at the other day, it's just like a studio on a parking lot in Los Angeles somewhere, and these are just strangers just colliding with each other for 3 months. And I try to keep myself grounded and remind myself of that. So to not feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders for any particular reason. But yeah, also just thankful to be able to sit down and talk with you guys for 2.5 hours and have an extended conversation about, I think, a really fun week in the history of the show. So. Yeah,
it has been such an interesting week, and I do want to say, I think that even though I think it has been exciting and interesting, and I think it has been entertaining, I also do get the frustration, especially as somebody that has been so invested in Taylor's journey. I definitely have even found myself getting caught up in just the story of her getting to the end and winning, and we're finally getting her as the HOH. And even though it was entertaining, I also did feel that frustration of like, damn it, I thought we were gonna get something other than this here. So I think the positive thing is that, again, this twist does, I think, potentially benefit Taylor and Joseph to a degree, depending on how these groupings shape up. And I would say, just in general, I think it's okay to be frustrated. You know, you don't have to enjoy the mess. You know, I think a lot of times people are looked down on for, being a stan of this player and, you know, getting mad when things don't go their way. But like, that's okay too. Like, that's a perfectly acceptable way to watch the show. And you know, everyone is allowed to watch in the way that they want to watch it. It has definitely been quite the week, but hopefully we can all come together and enjoy the show as much as we can as the season progresses. And that's about what we've got for this week. So thank you all so much for joining us here. Of course, you can find me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong, if you want to come and hang out, watch some of these episodes live with me, and make some predictions and all of that good stuff. Of course, I'll be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern to update on everything that happens today and later tonight on the Big Brother 24 live feeds. And check out all the YouTube stuff. I got an Among Us video dropping tomorrow. Should be a very good one. And all kinds of good stuff there. Peridium, where can people find you?
I will quickly say I've watched a lot of your Among Us stuff. It's fun to go back. Going back a year and a half, 2 years. I've watched them. I'm like, oh yeah, takes me back to the Among Us era. But ultimately, yeah, you'll find me on YouTube, Peridium, Pridiam, and on Twitter. I don't tweet as often, but I'm there. And I put out one video every week. Currently going through Big Brother. I'll go until the end of the season, and then I'll switch to Survivor. So if you're a fan of Survivor, keep up with my channel. And yeah, new video coming out in 2 days. I'm going to be looking at I'm going into detail of the history of the wall comp, the evolution of it, and we'll look into some changes they've made, things I didn't even realize until I looked into it over the past week. But other than that, I've got other videos. I got another hack video coming out, of course. Got to put bread on the table. Looked at all the nomination speeches, veto speeches, eviction speeches. I watched from season 2 all the way to 24. That took a long time, more than I thought, and it's pretty boring at times. It was hard to get 10 of the best nomination speeches that don't just say good luck in the veto. I'm like, I want entertainment. I need Victor throwing beads across the table. I need Austin throwing a top hat. I don't get that very often, unfortunately. It's surprising. Eviction's the opposite. Eviction speeches, I tend to find that I could actually make like multiple videos out of the best eviction speeches. Looking into that. But yeah, new video every single week. So that's what I'm doing.
That's fun. That was fun. I love that.
Yes, and you can, of course, find Melissa at It's Melissa with 3 A's, 3 of them. And that's about what we have for you this week. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see all of you next time.